Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. You're watching Indigo Tech Tutorials. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can build a chat platform like Discord using Ruby on Rails, which is my favorite web development framework. So if you're excited to watch a video like that and to come with me on this journey, stay tuned. We're going to get right into it. So let's just go right over here onto the desktop. I'm going to start off by opening up the terminal. And I'll just zoom in here so you can see that. And first of all, I'm going to verify that I have Ruby and Ruby on Rails installed. So we can do that by typing in ruby-v. And yes, I'm on Ruby 3.41, which that's good. That's the latest version that came out in December, or actually right on Christmas. Now I'm also going to check Rails. So I'll do Rails-v to check the Rails version, which it looks like we're on Rails 8.01. which is also, I think, the latest version. There might be a newer version, but that doesn't really matter. As long as you have Rails 8 and Ruby 3 and higher, you're good to go. Those are pretty new versions. All right, so now that we have that verified, let me just clear out of here. And let's generate our new Rails app. So to generate a app using Ruby on Rails, we can use the Rails new command. So we'll just type in Rails new, and then we can put the name of our app. So I'm going to do Discord. And actually, I'll just say Discord-Rails. Now we can set any other options that we want to have, like CSS framework or database. So usually what I do is I'll set the CSS to use Tailwind. I'll say -c Tailwind, and then I'll set the database to PostgreSQL. You really don't need to use PostgreSQL for database, but I always do because it can come in helpful later. Like some platforms that you might host on, they support Postgres right out of the box, so it makes it a little bit easier when it comes to deploying your app and hosting it. Anyways, these are all totally customizable. You could use Bootstrap instead if you want, but this is the setup that I'm going to go for. So now that we have our options configured, I'm going to press enter, and this will go and generate our brand new app. So I'll give it a second and let it go through the generation step. And it's going to be installing everything that we need, including Tailwind. We have the built-in JavaScript library called Stimulus.js. And look, just like that, it's totally done. Oh, by the way, there's a new version of Tailwind that came out, version 4. So that's what it's going to use out of the box, which that's all good. So now that we have our app generated, we can cd into the app, just like this. It's not Discord app, it's Discord Rails. There we go. And then what I'll do is I'll just open this up in my text editor by pressing code dot. Although actually the first thing that I'm really going to do, so I'll close out of this. Let's just see if the app works. So to test if our app is working after we've just generated it, you're going to want to cd into the app, like make sure that you're inside of the folder. And then we're going to type bin/dev, which will run that command to start our app. And the reason why we're doing bin/dev is because I have Tailwind. If you didn't do Tailwind, it would just be Rails S. So that's kind of like an important thing to know if you're new to Rails. The only reason we do bin/dev is because I use Tailwind. And if we actually look at what that command does, you can go into your code, go over to bin in the dev file. And what it's actually doing is it's just like setting a couple variables here. And then it's going to start a server with Foreman. So Foreman is a library that allows you to, I guess, like run multiple processes at once. So that's why people like to use it. And you'll notice that it's using this -f command to set the procfile dev. So that's where all of our like server, that's where our config for which servers are going to be running when we do bin/dev. So if you want to take a look at that, it's going to be in the main level of your folder. And right down here at procfile.dev, you can take a look at that. And we have two servers, so one for web, which is just doing Rails S, and then one for CSS, which is Rails Tailwind CSS watch, which means whenever you write new code with Tailwind, it's going to automatically compile it and make it work, because that's kind of how Tailwind works, is it only includes the classes that you are using in your app. And there's kind of like all this stuff to think about, so that's why we end up just putting it in this procfile. But if you already had just ran your config, you don't even have to worry about all that stuff because it's already set up. Now we can go and verify if it works by opening the browser and then heading over to localhost:3000. And the first thing that it usually says is that you need to create the database, and that's because we're using PostgreSQL. So first of all, we need to create the database, but there's always this useful button right here that says create database. So you can just click it right there. And now that you have that completed, we should see this Rails screen, which means that everything's set up in our app and we're ready to start coding the website. Okay, so usually what I do in these videos is I start off by just building a home page, but I don't really feel like doing that for this video. So rather, I'm just going to get right into the core functionality of the app. And in this video, we're building Discord. So Discord is a chat platform. So of course, the first thing that you have to do when you go to Discord is you have to sign in or sign up for an account. And then after you get your account, you can either join a server or create your own server. So that's the first functionality that we're going to start building. So yeah, let's just straight up do that. So what we're going to want to do is the first thing I'm going to add is users. And to build a user system, like user authentication, user accounts, the easiest way to do that is to use a gem called Devise. So I've been using Devise ever since I started building websites with Rails, and it works so well. It's trusted by just basically everybody in the Rails community. There's a lot of big companies that use it. So yeah, Devise is pretty straightforward, and it's super easy to set up. I'll show you how to do that. So first of all, let's go into the terminal, and I'm just going to clear that for a second. And let's add the Devise gem by running bundle add Devise. So once we run this command, it's going to install the Devise gem, and it's usually really fast. So the next thing we can do is railsg devise :install, which this is going to install all the basic things for Devise, like adding the initial setup. And you'll see what it does. It just creates two files, really, the initializers and then the locals. It's also going to tell you that you should do a couple things, like you need to have a root for your app, but we haven't set a root for our app yet, so we're probably going to do that next. It says you also should have flash messages. We don't have that set up either. I guess we can add these flash messages because that's pretty easy. So all we have to do is just copy this flash message code, go into our app, and let's go over to the app views layouts. And I'm going to create a new partial. So to do that, I'm going to create a file, and I'll call it _alerts.html.erb. And the reason why I'm putting this in a partial is just so that the code will stay pretty clean, because now I'm going to go over to the layouts application file, and that's where I'm going to actually render the alerts. So usually you'd put the alerts at the very top of the body. So we can just render our partial right here. And we're going to have to specify the full path. So it's going to be, or actually not the full path, but inside of the views, whatever the path is. So it's inside the layouts folder, and then it's the alerts file. So you can just simply write it like this, render layouts alerts, and it's going to find that partial and render it into our app. All right, so the other thing is that we don't have a home page, we don't have a root for our app yet. So that might be something that we want to think about. I think what I'd probably do is I would just create a dashboard controller. So maybe you, like when you're signed in, you have a dashboard. If you're not signed in, it would just automatically redirect, but that could still be the root. So let's quickly create our dashboard controller. So I'll do this by simply typing railsg controller dashboard, and then I'm going to put a show action. So now that we do that, we can just press enter, and it's going to create our dashboard controller with the show action. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our code, and I'm going to head over to the config routes.rb. And what you'll notice is that it set this get for dashboard/show, but we're not really going to use that route because that's actually like the full route. We don't want to use that. Instead, I'm just going to delete this, and I'm going to go down to the root and uncomment this and set this to go to the dashboard controller and the show action. And then what I'll do is I'll save this, go back into the terminal, and run vid/dev. And now we should be able to go and reload our app in the browser, and you'll notice that we do see the dashboard page. That's awesome. We already have a dashboard view in our app. All right, so now that we have this dashboard page created, we're not going to really mess with that just yet. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to continue on the device setup. So now that we finished the necessities that it needed, like setting the root, adding the alerts. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate the user model because we haven't done that yet. So to generate that, we're going to type railsg device, and then we're going to put the name of the model. And I think I'll just call it user. Just keep it really simple. Then we can press enter. What this is going to do is it's going to add the route, or actually add the routes for signing in as a user, signing up. It's also going to add the user model. And finally, it's going to create the database table for users. So to finalize this, all we have to do is migrate the database with Rails DB migrate, and we now have users in our app. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and restart the server, and we can go back to the browser, give it a reload, and you'll notice that nothing has changed. But if we go into the URL and head over to users/sign_in, you'll notice that we do have a sign-in page. Although one thing is that the sign-in page is very ugly by default with Devise. Like, you basically can't even tell that this is a sign-in page. It's just like a bunch of random text and kind of like invisible fields. So what we can do is I created a gem to kind of fix this problem and to create a default starting point for Devise user accounts, but styling it with Tailwind CSS. So what we can do is let's go back in the terminal, and I'm going to add my gem. So we're going to do bundle add Tailwind_Devise. This is going to add the Tailwind Devise gem. And then finally, we can run railsg Tailwind_Devise views to generate those views. Now, if you don't want to even use Tailwind, or you just want to style it yourself, there is the option to just run railsg Devise views. What it'll do is it'll copy the blank views, like for all of this stuff, into your app, and then you can personally customize it. But I think if you're already using Tailwind Devise, or if you're already using Tailwind, you might as well just use my gem, because it saves a lot of steps of having to customize each of these pages. Cool. So now that we have that, let's just go ahead and restart the server, and we can check out our views for sign in now after adding the Tailwind Devise gem. So already it looks a whole lot better. We have it centered, it has a border and everything, and a nice button. So I think it looks pretty good. Although one thing is that the fields are really small. That's one thing I noticed is in the new version of Tailwind, they don't add the form styling by default. So there's supposed to be this plugin for Tailwind that's called like forms, and it makes these fields, I guess, like look a little bit better. And I was relying on that in the gem. So I want to see if I can add that back. So I'm going to look up add forms plugin to Tailwind 4, because it looks like it changed. It says it isn't available in v4. That's silly. Let's see. Yeah, honestly, I have no idea. How do we do this? Everything resides in the app CSS file. All right, let's see if I could have one of those. Let's go to app assets. We have a Tailwind application file. Okay, and we're importing Tailwind CSS. Oh, we also have a style sheets file application that's just blank. That's interesting. How would I add the plugin for forms? It's saying that you could add it like this, app plugin Tailwind CSS/forms. So I'll try to add this into our code, although already I'm getting some errors. I don't think it likes that. Wait, but when I reload, it actually worked. Guys, it worked. See, now these fields are way bigger. So I guess that's all you have to do, and then you can just ignore the highlighting that happens with VS Code, because this does work. Okay. That looks pretty good. So now if we're going to create an account, it should work. So I'm just going to create a little test account and verify that this does work. So we signed up, and then after signing up, you get sent over to the dashboard page. So that is perfect. That's just how we want it to work. Although one thing is that there are a few things that Discord has that we haven't implemented in our app yet. For example, the biggest thing that I was thinking about is the username Of course, you have to set a username when you're signing up for Discord, and that's what people are going to see as like your username. And they actually have a display name field too. So you might have two, like a display name and a username, but we could keep it simple and just use a username for now. So I'm actually going to sign out. And to sign out, we don't even have an option to sign out. So I'm going to quickly add a link so I can sign out. So to do that, let's go over to the app views. Let's just go to the layouts application, and let's might as well just put a little nav bar in real quick. What I'll do is I'll render another partial over the, or on top of the alerts. I'm going to call this nav bar. So we're going to render layout slash nav bar. And then we're going to need to create that matching partial file. So over in the layouts folder, I'm going to create a new file. I'll call this underscore navbar.html.erb. And inside of the navbar, I'll just add very, very simple code. I'll say width full, give it like a height of 16, and I'll give it a dark background just so we can see it right now. I'll also do a flex justify center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a second level div inside of it where we can add a max width. I'll say like max width 5XL, and I'll do, actually we don't need to do MX auto because we're already using flex to center this div. But what we can do is we can add flex, and I'll say item center and justify between, which means whatever elements are inside of this div, it's going to push it to opposite sides. So inside of the div, what we'll have is, we'll first have a link just to like go to the, whatever the root path is. So usually that just says like home, and this will go to root path, or you could just put slash. So if you wanted to do like string slash, that would work too. Or we could just say root path like this. And then we'll add just a little styling. And then let's go ahead and reload and make sure that this is even showing up correctly. All right, and it's totally working just like how I expected it. So if we click home, that would bring us home. And then what I was thinking is for right now, I'll just add a little button to sign out. So what we'll do is we'll add a link to, say, sign out. And this is going to go to destroy underscore user session path. This will destroy the user session and sign them out. And as far as styling, I guess I'll just do like a little, let's do gray backgrounds, some padding, some rounded, although this is definitely extra. We don't need all of this because I'm probably just going to get rid of this button anyways once we continue in the series, or continue in the video, I guess. And then what we're going to need to do is to make this actually create, or to make this send the correct request that device is expecting, we have to change the turbo method to send the delete request instead of the default get request that a link usually would send. So to do that, I'm going to set the data to an object, and then inside of that, I'm going to set turbo method to use delete as the request type that it's going to send. That's really all we need to do. So if we go back in here and then click sign out, it actually did sign us out successfully, as you can see on the alert. Although the sign out button is still there, that's just because we haven't put any like double check that we only show this to users that are signed in. But we can quickly add that by adding to the end of this link to, we can just say if current user, and then we reload, we'll see that the button is not there because it's only going to show up if there is a current user that's signed in. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the device form to allow a username as well as the email. And then we can even extend the login section to allow signing in with either username or email. That's a pretty standard thing to do. So first of all, what we probably want to do is we want to block off, or we want to restrict this dashboard page to only the users that are signed in. So we still haven't done that yet. And what we can do to fix that is go into our code, and let's go over to the controllers, and let's just go to the application controller, and I'm going to add a before action at the top. So say before action authenticate user, just like this, and that means that any controller or action inside of our Rails app will now be restricted to only signed in users. So if you're not signed in, it's going to redirect you to the sign in page. And we can take a look at that working by just reloading our app, and you should see immediately we get this message that says you need to sign in or sign up before continuing, and it brings us to the login page. So now that we're here, I'm going to go over to the sign up page, the create an account page, and I'm actually going to modify this to allow a username field as well as the email. So to do this, we have to add to the permitted parameters for devise. So I'm just going to look that up real quick because probably the easiest way to find that answer. Let's look up add devise username. And this guy seems to have a good tutorial. It was a couple years old, but things really haven't changed that much for devise. Like, not a bit. So let me take a look. Let me scroll through here. So this is the part that we're going to do is this section right here. We're going to, actually, I'll just copy all this code and drop it into our application controller, and then I'll kind of walk you guys through so you can see what's going on. All right, so now that we have the code in the controller, what we're doing is we're saying a before action. We are doing this custom method that we created, but we're only doing it if it's the devise controller. So we're not going to run this on like every action in our app because that's not really necessary. It's only needed if it is the devise controller. And now another thing to note is that we're putting it inside of a protected method instead of private. That's really important because protected means that the controllers that inherit from this application controller can access this method. But if it was inside of a private, they would not be able to access it and it would just get blocked off. So you need to make sure it's only in protected, not in private. If you're going to have any private methods, just make sure to put it underneath like that. But right now we don't need any private methods. And yeah, not at this point. So now I'm going to check out the code inside of our method. So what we're doing is we're permitting two different things. Well, actually, we're permitting the same thing, except for we're doing it for sign up and account update. So this sign up is like the initial registration, of course, and then account update is when you're updating the account. And now we can set the keys that you want to permit. So really you just have to add any additional keys that aren't the initial keys. So for us, we're going to have a username. So I'm going to replace the name with username. And now this is what the final code looks like. So we're running this before action, which is going to configure our additional settings to set the username. Now, actually, we don't have a username field on our model. So we're also going to have to add that username. And we can go and do that right now by going into our terminal. I'm going to stop the server real quick, and I'm going to run a migration command. So I'll say railsg migration, and we're going to do add underscore username to users. And then username will be type string. We could also make this unique right now if we want to make sure that usernames are unique. But one thing that's interesting is actually that Discord doesn't do unique usernames. Instead, they give you I think like a 4-number digit, like some amount of digits at the end of your username to make sure that it is unique. So that's something that I want to add also. So we might want to add that field too. So we could have our username string, and then we could do space and add the migration for the numbers. So let's just say like user numbers, let's just call it that. And this could be type, I guess, integer. And then we're gonna have to figure out some way to validate this to make sure that it is unique. But for right now, I think this looks pretty good. So we're gonna add these two fields, the username and the user numbers. And after we've done that, oh yeah, if you want to check out the migration, make sure that everything is correct, you can just cat that file real quick and see what we're adding. So we're adding a new column, or actually 2 new columns to the users table. We have the username and the user numbers. So that looks good to me. Now we can just do db migrate to migrate the database, and we can restart the server. All right, and I'm gonna go back to our code, and still nothing is different, but we have the whole setup to pass a username through the sign up form. So at this point, all we have to do is add an additional field to the form, and it will work because it's expecting a username now. So what we can do is we can go back into our code editor, and I'm just going to close out all this stuff real quick. And let's head over to the app views, and let's go to devise registrations new. And right underneath email, I'm actually just going to copy this field to make it a little bit easier. And I'm gonna change it from email to username. And then for the field, it's just gonna be a text field. And we don't need autofocus because autofocus is usually just for the first item to tell the browser like which, which field to snap onto when it's loading the page. We're also going to change autocomplete to username, and that's really all we have to do. That looks pretty good. We can reload, and now you'll see that we have the username field on our form. So that's awesome. And then if you want to make sure that the user settings page also has that, we can go ahead and copy this field over to registrations edit real quick, just like that. And now you'll be good to go for signing up and also editing the accounts. So what I'll do is I'll come in here and I'm going to test this out by creating a new user. I'm just going to fill out this information, and then for username, just do Indigo, and I'm going to fill out my password and sign up. Boom, just like that, we've signed up. Now, I can't really tell if I have a username yet, so what we can do is let's put the username up here in the nav bar to tell if we are signed in and if we have that username. So to do that, we're going to go to the views layouts navbar file again, and I'm actually going to create a div around the sign out link, and that'll just hold all of our elements that are on the right side of the navbar. So I'll just do div, I'll give it a flex, item center, gap 4, so that should space it out enough. And we can just close out that div, and then what I'll do is I'll move this if current user to outside of the link, and I'll actually just wrap our whole div. Say if current user, and I'll indent this, and we'll add the end. So we're only going to render this content if this check passes. So this is a cool thing you could do with embedded Ruby, where you could just do an if statement, and then if there's no current user, it's not going to show any of the content here. And inside of here, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a span. Just do a little bit of styling, and then I'll print out the current user dot username. I'm going to reload, and boom, we got the username showing up. So that means it did work. We were able to create our account, and we have a username. So the one thing that we didn't handle is setting the numbers. That's something that I would want to do right away. So to set those user numbers, we can probably just go to the models user.rb, and I can define a method here. So I'm actually going to add a private section. Then we can create a method that's going to be set user numbers, and this will get run, I think, probably just before validations, because I'm probably going to add validations to make sure that the user numbers are correct. So we can say before validation set user numbers, and then inside of here we can say self.user numbers equals, well, whatever the numbers would be. So we're going to need 4 different numbers that are unique, that are not taken by anybody else. So I don't even know the best way to do this. That's where it becomes kind of tricky, because we have to check, first of all, the username. So what other users have the same username, and then what numbers they have. So it becomes kind of tricky, but I think we can probably do some sort of query in here. I don't even know if this is the most optimal way to do it. You guys are always free to do your own solution. But let's just say like other users. So I'm going to create a new variable, like other users with same username. And I'm going to set this to a query, which is going to say user.where username is going to be username. All right, so we're going to find other users with same username. Now what we can do is we can grab, what should we do? I guess I'm almost thinking that we could start at like 1, and then every time a new user signs up with the same username, you just add 1 to that number. That actually might be a great idea now that I think about it. So all we have to do is do .count on these. So the other users with same username, just do .count, and we could do +1. that sounds pretty good to me. That seems like a fair way to make sure that, you know, whenever you create an account, you should have the right amount of usernames or the right amount of the right number that's unique. So this seems good. And what I'll probably do is I'll do when I'm setting this before validation, I want to add a if key. So we only want to run this if. Then we're going to add a, I think this is called a lambda. It's basically just a fancy way to have a little bit of code to determine if it's true or false for the if key. So inside of this, the blocks or the hash keys, whatever, the squiggly brackets, we can check. So we only, think about it, we only want to run this method set user numbers if we don't already have user numbers defined. So we'll say if user numbers dot nil, or we could also just say dot empty. And I think that's a pretty good way to do it. So now, since we already have created the account and we didn't run this code, I'm just going to manually run this method and make sure that it works from the console. So I'll just stop the server real quick and open up the console with Rails C. And I'll just say user.last.save, and it should automatically try to create or set the user numbers, but we actually got an error, undefined method empty for nil. So I guess empty doesn't work because it's already like the user numbers is nil in the database. So I guess what we can do is we can say dot present, we can say if not. So we'll put a exclamation point before we do this code, and it'll just check if not user numbers are present. So if it's nil, or if it's blank, or if it's anything like that. Then we can retest this, but first we have to reload our console. So there's actually a method that we can run called reload with the exclamation point, which will reload all of our code so we get the new stuff without actually leaving the Rails console. And then we can just rerun that same code, save the last user, and it looks like it did update the user, which means that it probably did work. So I just want to check the user.last and see what we have. So I'm going to take a look. We have user numbers. Check it out. It actually set it to 2 because we're using count plus 1 just to be safe. And I think that's still a good way of doing it. So that's my user numbers is 2. And yeah, that looks pretty good. What I'll do is I'll exit out of here, restart the server, and then I want to display the user numbers because that's usually something they do in Discord. So like right next to the username, we'll just do # and then the numbers. So I'm going to go and implement that inside of our code. So let's go over to the views layouts navbar again. And right here in the span where we're rendering the username, I'm going to go outside of the embedded Ruby for a second and just put a #. And I'm going to go back into embedded Ruby. And I'm going to do the current user user numbers, just like that. And if we reload, we should see our username plus the numbers that we have. And I think if we create a new account, it should automatically get a new number. So I'm going to test that out real quick by going to incognito, loading up localhost, and then creating a new user account. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to use the same username, Indigo. Sign up. Okay. Wait, that's so weird. Okay, now we get the number 1, which is interesting. And I think I know what's happening because inside the user model, we're running before validation. So what would happen is that if there's no users with the same username, it would actually come out nil. But you guys might be thinking, wait, it is the same username, Indigo. But there is a slight difference. On the left side, the I was capitalized. And on the right side, it's not capitalized. So in our query, we're not handling capitalization, which means that, yeah, this is not working right now. So if we wanted to handle capitalization, we have to do a more fancy query. So I'll show you guys how to do that because we definitely do want to handle capitalization. I think if you have the same username but different capitalization, it should still be like the same username. So let's go ahead and handle that by, instead of setting our query with keys, I'm going to set a string, and we'll say where username is like And then we could do a question mark. So when you do question mark, it means that you're trying to do interpolation in your query. And this makes your queries way more secure because it prevents like some sort of hacking. I forget the word for it now. But basically, if we had just rendered username, some guy could technically hack the query and get anything that they want out of this. So it's always a good idea to just do this safe interpolation, which basically just means use a question mark, then we'll do a comma, put another string, and we can put whatever data we want to put into that query. So I'm actually going to do double percents, which I think this means like check from the start to the last. Like it makes it more specific. I think that's important. And inside of it, I'm going to do a string interpolation in Ruby, and I'll just pass in username. And I actually want to lower both of these so we can go lowercase for each one. And to do that, we can just wrap this in the lower. So we'll do lower username and then lower the question mark. And I think this should work pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and test this in the console. So I'm going to open up RLC and I'm going to set username equal to Indigo, because that's the user that I have. And then I'm going to run this query and see what happens. And boom, just like that, we have the two users. Even though they had different capitalization, our query did work. That is just awesome. So I'm going to exit out of here, and I think we're good to go, guys. That was just like one little small thing that I noticed. Not a really big deal, but it could be important later. Yeah, I think from now on, we're good to go. Okay, so now that we have our user account set up and we're able to sign in, we also have the whole user numbers thing configured. That is really awesome. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is going to be users having the ability to create servers. So that's something that we haven't done yet. And what I'll probably do is I'll just like change the styling on this dashboard page to make it look a little bit more like how Discord or like a chat platform might be. So I'm almost thinking we'll have like a sidebar where you can view all your servers, and then you'll have kind of the rest of the space will just be for the active chat that you're inside of. And yeah, this will be really cool. So I'll probably the first thing I'll do is just create the new server model. And to do that, I'm going to do a scaffold, because when you scaffold, it makes everything way easier. It will generate all the views that you need, like the basic views. And of course, we are going to want to customize them, but I think scaffolding just gives you a pretty nice head start. So let's jump right into the terminal. I'm going to clear this content out, and then let's set up our scaffold for the servers model. So what we can do is we can run a railsg scaffold, and then you'll put the name of your model that you're going to generate. So I'm going to call this server, and a server is going to have all these different attributes that now we're going to have to think about. So the first thing that's really basic is just the name. So the name of the server, which will be a string by default. And then a server will have an owner. So actually the layout for servers is it's going to be, there's an owner of a server, and there's also members of the server. But both of those are still going to use the user model. And so we're going to have to use a little bit of Rails magic to make that work. And I don't want to just say like, server belongs to user. I want to actually say server belongs to owner, just so that's way more readable in the code. So let's just add that owner belongs to, just like this. And then we'll handle the members later, because that's kind of like an additional table that we'll add to allow users to join a server. So I think this looks good. I don't really think there's much else that we could add to servers right now. So what I'm going to do is I'll press enter to generate this, and it's going to do a bunch of stuff. It's actually going to create the migrations, the model, the routes, the controllers, and everything. So that's what I like about scaffolds. But now one quick thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and edit the migration, because right now it's going to look for an owner model or an owner database table, but we don't have that. So we're going to have to slightly change our code. So to do that, I'm going to open up our code editor and go over to the db migrate folder. And then we're going to go to the latest migration, where we have this migration setting that belongs to owner, null, false. And really the important thing here is changing the foreign key. So right now we just say foreign key true, but what that's going to do is it's going to create this whole thing where it's looking for an owner's table when we don't have one. So instead, we can add some curly brackets, and inside of here we can say, I think it's to table, although I'm not sure. It's either on table or to table. There's like, I can never remember this. I'm gonna guess it's to table, and then when we migrate it should tell us if that's wrong or not. We're gonna say foreign key to table users, so now it knows that it should look for a users table instead of an owners table. Now we can go back into the terminal and run railsdb migrate to migrate the database, and there wasn't any errors, so I think we did do that correctly. So that's perfect. So now I'll just restart the server with bin/dev, and I'm going to quickly go and check out our app models server.rb, and oh yeah, there's definitely something that we have to change here. So right now it says server belongs to owner, and in Rails it's going to look for an owner's, like an owner model, but we only have a user model. So to switch that up, we can say, I think, class name user. So now it knows it's not looking for an owner model, it's actually looking for a user model. And now we're going to go over to user.rb, and we're going to add a has many so that we can link the servers to the users. So what I'll actually do is I'll say has many owned servers. So these are the servers that a user has created. You could also call it like created servers, but I think owned servers makes sense since we have that owner attribute. And we're going to also have to set the class name here to go to the server model, because we're not looking for an owned servers model, we're looking for just a server model. And then I think sometimes you have to say the foreign key. So like what foreign key did we use? And if you guys remember in that migration, the foreign key is owner ID. So I think we just say like owner ID possibly right here. Yeah, although we can totally make sure that this works. There might be something else that we have to add, but I'm going to quickly verify this by stopping the server. I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to go into Rails console, and I'm going to go to the last user, and I'm going to try to load up the owned servers and see if we get an error. So it looks like there's no error, but I think this actually does work, although we're going to have to test this out by creating the server. So I'm going to restart and go back into our app, and let's go ahead and style this dashboard page a little bit better real quick, and then we can add in the link to creating a new server. All right, let's go ahead and start working on the styling for this page. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go over to code. I'm going to close all these real quick. Let's go to the app views dashboard show page. So right now we have this basic little like title and text that's just default in the dashboard. What we can just do is delete this real quick, reload, and now we have no content. And what I want to do real quick is I want to show you how much space this show page is actually taking. So I'm going to quickly add a div, and I'm going to try to take up the full space on the page by doing with full height screen. So H screen, and then I'm going to add a background color. So let's just say PG Indigo 500. Let's close out the div, and then I'm going to go and reload. And as you can see, this is how much space that dashboard is taking up. So you'll notice that there's a bunch of padding on the edges, and that is padding that's added inside of another file. So in the layouts application file, we have this main container, which is wrapping the yield, and inside the yield, that's where all of our views are actually rendered. So this is going to add like some additional padding that we probably don't want because it's going to mess with our styling. So what I'll do is I'll just remove that main tag and make sure that this is like this, and also make sure that you have that yield, because if you get rid of the yield, well, things are probably not going to work. And let's reload. And now we have the full page, getting taken up by that div, so that's great. So now we can go into the show page, and we don't really need this code anymore. What I'll do is I'm going to add a top level div, which is going to be full width, and why don't we do min height screen, so it's going to be at least a minimum of the full screen. And then we can add a background color. So whatever background color you want to have for your site, just say it's like BG Gray 700. See how that looks. So now we have this nice like gray color, although I don't like it that much. Go with a dark indigo instead. I mean, it's not bad, right? It's not terrible. It actually does remind me of Discord, now that I think about it. I think that's the kind of the theme that they go for. And then what I was thinking is we're going to add a sidebar, which will take up like a little bit on the side. And that's where we can have the button to create servers and also, you know, viewing all your servers that you have. So what we can do is inside of this show, inside of our div that we created, why don't we render a new partial? So I'm just going to render, I'm going to call this sidebar. Now we don't have to specifically set the full path, at least not yet, because we're rendering this inside of the dashboard folder. It's going to already look for partials that are inside of the same folder. In contrast to the layouts, if you render anything inside of the layouts application, you have to hard code the full path. Otherwise, it's going to try to use whatever path you have when you're rendering that specific controller. So that's like one thing that you'll learn that as you keep going and developing your apps. So back to the dashboard show page. If we just say this render sidebar, it's going to look for that partial with the same name. So let's go ahead and create that file, which will be a partial. So we're going to use underscore, call it underscore sidebar.html.erb. And then inside of this sidebar file, we can add a div class, and let's just make this take up a certain amount of width. So it could either be like 64, 96, or if you want to do your own width, this is just with Tailwind, of course. Let's do height full, and I'm going to give it a background just so we can make sure that it's coming through. So let's do BG Gray 700, which should stand out from the indigo. So if you reload, I don't actually see anything. I think it's because we're just saying height full, but we might as well say like min height screen, just like we did for the other one, so that it actually shows up. So if we do that min height screen, boom, now we totally do see it. We have this whole like sidebar, and I think it is kind of a bit large, so I might reduce this to width 80, a little bit smaller. All right, there we go. And then we can hop right into adding that link to create a new server. So that's what I'll probably do right away. And yeah, I think what I'll do is on this sidebar, I'm gonna add flex call class. Let's give it a little bit of padding. And then I'm gonna add a div for like the top elements. Although I don't know how many elements we're gonna really have up there. It doesn't even matter, but let's do flex with full. And for now, I'll just justify it at the end, which means it pushes it to the right. And inside of here, I'm going to add a link to. This is going to be for creating new server. So I guess I'll just call it create server as the text. And then we're going to do a comma, and we're going to add the path to where that's going to go. Really, that's just going to go to new underscore server path. And then we could even add some quick styling. I'm just going to make it so that at least the text is a little bit lighter. And boom, just like that, we have a link. Although I might want to turn that into a button, just because why not? So I'm going to add some padding, some rounded, and then we'll give it a nice background. Do blue background, and boom, now we have a nice little button to create a server. And if we click on that, it actually brings us to the new server form. So that's pretty nice. Although I kind of want to center this form because I don't like how that's all the way to the left. But that's just a small detail. So let's go over to that form code. So that's inside the views servers. So all of this code was generated by that scaffold that we did. The page that we're on right now is the new page. See, new server page. This isn't really that important though, like the styling, but it could be nice to fix it. I guess if we just say MX auto on this div, boom, it already pushes it into the center a little bit. And then if we do flex call item center, it should actually center all the content inside of it. Although that does some weird stuff right off the bat. It made things a lot smaller. So maybe we don't want to do that. At least not yet. So I'll just leave it on the MX auto. We can always get back to this, by the way. But let's check the flow. So when you click create server, it brings you to this page. And yeah, we don't really have to think about styling it too much because we can always change this in a second. But one thing is the owner field. We don't actually want to show that owner field because it's going to be whatever the user who's signed in and viewing the form is. So we don't actually need to show this on the page. So right away, I'm going to go over to the server's form partial, and I'm going to remove this owner ID field, reload, and now we have this simplified server form, which is just asking for the name. So if I wanted to say like this is my Indigo tech server, we should be able to create it, and right away we get an error, owner must exist, but I do exist. So I guess there's a problem in the way that our code is, or the way that we're creating the server in the controller. So let's go over there and check that out. So let's go to the app controllers, servers controller, and I just want to take a look at the create action, because this is where we're creating the server. And yeah, right now we're just creating the server straight up by saying server.new. Instead of that, we want to create it off of the current user. We could say like current user.owned servers. So remember we added that method, and I feel like this should work. It's possible it might not, but let's see. Create server. It totally worked. So we just created our first server, and obviously with the scaffold, we have all this like code that's not really important just yet. But if we go back to the home page, we can work on rendering the servers, and then we can handle like cleaning up all of these pages to make this look a little bit nicer. But yeah, first I want to keep it simple. Let's go over to the views dashboard sidebar, and let's render all of the servers that you own. So I'm going to add a new div, and let's add the flex call class, gap2, and then what we'll do is we'll add some embedded Ruby. Let's say the current user owns servers, and let's order them by created at descending. So it means use the newest, or show the newest first, like the most latest servers first. Let's do a each do server. Then we'll end this block. And inside of here, we could just simply put this code, although we might want to, refactor this into a partial in a second. I'll just add a div, some padding, some rounded. Well, actually, I don't know if I'm going to even add a background color. Really, all we need to do is just straight up render the server name. We can say server name, just like that. And then we could think of any styling that we want. So yeah, that is kind of bland. I'll probably add some, like, something at least. I'm going to wrap the server part in a span. Now we have something like this, and then I can add styling onto the span. And at least make the color a little bit lighter. And if we do want to add like a background to this element, let's do with full BG gray, do a slightly lighter gray so it sticks out. And yeah, that's not bad, I guess. But you know what? I want to add some margin between this and the button. Do margin top 4. And boom, now we can see that this is our server that we created right here. I think that looks pretty cool. And obviously if we go create another server, it would show up. It should show up on top because we're sorting it. So let's create another one, say like my Indigo music server. And if I press create server, go back to home, boom, now I have 2 servers showing up on the left. So that's already pretty fun. We haven't even added in any functionality except for creating servers. All right, so now that we have this little simple sidebar set up, we have the option to create a server. Just had an idea of one way that we could already clean up the UI of the server form and everything, and that's by using a feature in Hotwire called a turbo frame. So if we put a turbo frame on our page, what we can do is when we click create server, instead of refreshing the whole page going to a new route, we can just render this form right inside of this main dashboard. So I'll show you guys how we could do that. So I'm going to go over to the dashboard's show page, and right next to the sidebar, I'm going to add a turbo frame, and add turbo frame tag, and I'm going to call this dashboard. I'm also going to add a flex class on this top level div, just so that it positions the sidebar on the left and the dashboard turbo frame on the right. And if we reload, we shouldn't see any difference. And now to get this button to actually trigger the request inside the turbo frame, we have to go over to the sidebar. Let's go to this link, and I'm going to add the data key, and I'm going to set the turbo frame to dashboard. So now, when we make the request, it is going to send the request, and now you'll notice that when we click the create server button, it doesn't redirect the whole page, but we do get this content missing error, and that's because on that new server form, we don't have a matching turbo frame of dashboard, so we need to add that. What I'll do is I'll go to the views servers new, and I'm going to wrap this whole div inside of a turbo frame. Let's do turbo frame tag dashboard, and then I'm going to, I think we have to add a block actually, so I have to add do, and I can end it out here. And now we've wrapped that form inside of a turbo frame. So when we click create new server, it actually renders it right here inside of dashboard. So that's pretty awesome. Although the styling does get messed up. So I think I'm going to change the styling on this div to just use like a fixed width. So we'll do max width 2XL, width full. And let's see how that looks. All right, it's a little bit better. We could probably add MX auto. Try to add some margin. Okay, that didn't work. We could probably, we could definitely add a div that takes up the full width, I think. And we could do flex justify center to push this form div into the center, just so we can get that more centered. Although that didn't work because I think width full, it's probably not taking the full width. So maybe what we want to do is right here next to the sidebar, add a div and just make sure that this is actually taking up the full width. And I'm going to add flex call class. Boom. Already, there we go. We get the form right in the center. That's pretty cool. And then what we could probably do is change this back button to cancel, and then instead of going back to the servers page, because as you can see that causes an error because it's just going back to the server's index, we actually want this back button to go back to the dashboard page. So it'll just reset the turbo frame to an empty frame. So to do that, I'll go to the new page, and then down here at this back to servers, I'm going to change this to cancel, and I'm going to set this to I'll do the root path. That should work. So now when we press cancel, it just actually cancels out the server. But if we want to create the server, boom, we can create it. Although again, it doesn't go to the right place. We actually get content missing error because it's trying to redirect to the server's index. And that's because of in the controllers, how we're handling the create action. So I'm going to go over to the app controllers, servers controller, and inside of this def create, we have like all this code right here handling all these different situations, which I don't really think is that important because we're not trying to support a JSON API. Probably just remove all of this stuff, and we'll say if it does save, just redirect to the root path. Simple as that. And when we reload, we do see that we got the server, but let me try this again. Do server 2, create server. And what happens is, oh, now we get this error, unknown format. That's because we have this in a respond to block, so it is expecting you to return some format. So I'm actually just going to remove that. And then for the else, let's just leave render new. This, and I'll get rid of the format HTML and format JSON. And this should work a lot better now. So if I go back to home, create another server, let's create. Boom, now it goes back to the dashboard and everything kind of works out right. The only thing is on the left side, I don't see the new server, and that's because since we were navigating inside of a turbo frame, the rest of the content on the page did not get updated when we navigated. And that is a feature, but at the same time, we don't get to see our new server on the left. So one way that we can get around that is by going back to the dashboard, and what we can do is we can set target top on the turbo frame, which means all the requests inside of the turbo frame will automatically target the top level of our app, which means it would, when you submit a request and it redirects, it's going to redirect the whole page. So it kind of gets rid of like the reason why you might use a turbo frame, but at the same time, this will work really well because then we can, click create server, have our form pop up. But then if we do need to create a server, do that create server for, boom, now we get it updated on the left. So I think that experience is really good. All right, so now that we got that refactoring done for the create server button, that now the UI really pops up the form in the center of the page, kind of like how we expected. There's a few tweaks we can make, of course, because like the text doesn't really match the background, but that's just really small things. I think I will do that real quick before we move on to the next items. So let's go back to the server's new form, and I'm just gonna make it so that this title is a little bit lighter. Okay, all right, that's already better. And then I kind of want to push it down too, because I don't like how it's just way up at the top. So what we can do is we can add some padding top to this div. Now it's going to push it down a little bit. We could also add a whole background around these items if we wanted to. So now when you click the button, oh, the background actually takes up a little bit more space than I was expecting. So I think I want to put it on this bottom level div. Oops. Let's put our background color here. And yeah, now we kind of have like this little modal kind of vibe. But what we could do is add some padding, of course, and some rounded just to kind of clean that up. And now when you click create server, I think that's a pretty comfortable UI. The last thing that we could kind of add is for this label, we can make that text lighter. So I'll go over to the form, and on the label, class and make this lighter. And boom, already we've cleaned up that UI bunch. Okay, that looks amazing. So let's move on to the next thing, which is actually opening up the server that you created. So right now there's no way to really open up the server. Well, actually there is. If we go into the URL and go to like a specific server, you'll see that we can show the server. This is just a basic show page that was added through the scaffold. But what we really want to have happen is when you click on a server on the left, we want to populate this turbo frame with the server and all the content that would be inside of that server. So let's see how we could do that. Let's go over to the dashboard folder in the sidebar partial, and let's just take a look at what's happening right here. So we are looping over the user's owned servers, and we're just showing like this simple div. But if we wanted to, let's say, link this to the show page of the server, we could easily do that by wrapping this in a link to, and then just passing in server as the object. So now when you click on it, it would actually bring you to the show page of the server. I'm gonna go ahead and reload, and now you even notice we have the cursor because these are links. So if we click on it, it actually brings us to the server. But what we probably want to do is just like how we added the turbo frame for the create button, we'll probably do the same thing for the server. So when you click server, it doesn't actually re-render the whole page, it just puts it over here in this turbo frame. So to do that, we can just take the same data attribute from our create server link and add this to our link to. I'm gonna add a comma here, and then we'll do this data turbo frame dashboard. And now back on, actually over on the server's show page, we need to add the matching turbo frame so that when you make the request, it knows to replace the content with the matching turbo frame content. So we're just gonna wrap all of this code inside of a new turbo frame with the same name as the one from the dashboard, which is just dashboard. So let me wrap all this code, reload, and now when we click, boom, it actually pops up the server when you click on the server. So that's already really cool. Although obviously this show page, this isn't really the type of stuff that we want to have when you load up a server. So if you guys are familiar with Discord, I think when you click into a server, it almost changes the sidebar Am I right? Or maybe there's like an additional sidebar that pops up, like a server sidebar. So we're gonna have to figure that out. But what we can do is totally just go to that server show page, and honestly, I think we could just remove all the content so it's just empty, because we're gonna redo a lot of this. So now when you click, it is rendering the server, but there's just no content yet. So let's add some content for what we're gonna show on that server page. So let's just start with the width full height screen. I just want to verify that this is showing up. So I'm going to do a little basic kind of thing, and then we'll do a h1 for the title, and we can put the name of the server here. So I'm just going to render using embedded Ruby. We're going to say the server.name. So now we can click, and boom, as you can see, it is loading up the different servers when I click on it. So yeah, one thing I might do is we can center that text real quick. Just doing text center, and boom, now we can totally tell that we're on the right server room. We can even add some padding if we want. All right, so let's get to the next thing, which is in Discord, inside of your servers, you're gonna have channels. So you're gonna be able to create channels for the servers, and then those channels are basically just chat rooms that you can have. And then there's even voice channels, which we might get to later. That's kind of a more advanced thing. But I think starting it off with just text channels would be a great thing to do for this video. And then you're basically most of the way there. So I can't remember if they do like a secondary sidebar, if they just replace the left sidebar with the channels. Maybe they do like a drop down kind of thing. So we could do that too. Maybe when you click on a server, it'll like slide out all the different channels. Yeah, but let's get into that. So right now we don't have any channels for the servers, right? So that's the first thing that we're going to kind of have to add. And I think what I'll do is I will do another scaffold for channels. So let's go ahead and go back into the terminal. We're going to run this new scaffold command. Now that we're in the terminal, let's type in railsg scaffold, and we'll put the name of our model that we want to generate. So I think we could do channel, but you have to be careful because there are some words that are reserved in Rails. And I think channel might be reserved because of like action cable channels. I'm not sure. We can even look it up, like reserved words in Ruby on Rails scaffolding. I wonder if there's just like a list of all the reserved words. Oh look, there is one right here. Although this, it was a Heroku app, and if you guys remember, Heroku got rid of the free plan, so I'm sure guy's site is no longer up. It's too bad. Let's see. Oh look, these are all the reserved things. So, I mean, yeah, I don't see channel. This is crazy. I don't know if this is actually that accurate. Anyways, what we're gonna do. All right, let me just rerun this command because that was annoying. All right, so now we're gonna generate the scaffold for our channel. So I'm gonna type in railsg scaffold, and what I want to do is I want to namespace the channel inside of server. So instead of just channel, it'll be server : channel. So to do that, we can just do server/channel in the scaffold command, and now it's going to create a namespaced channel model. And then what we'll probably have is a name, and then it is going to belong to a server, so we can add server belongs to. And really, I think that's all we really need to do right now. So we can press enter to generate this scaffold. Now, one thing it's going to ask is if you want to overwrite your existing server model, and we don't want to do that, so you want to type N for no. So it's not going to mess with your existing server model, but it's going to generate everything else. All right, and then let's just migrate the database with railsdb migrate, and boom, we now have server channels in our app. So I'm going to restart the server, and I'm actually going to go into the code real quick and just take a look at our new model. So if we go to app models, we now have a server folder, and inside of it we have a channel. So as you can see, it's class server channel. So we kind of namespaced it here, and I think that's a good way of doing it. So let's go over to server. So usually when you do a scaffold, the model that you generate has the association, like it knows that it belongs to a server, but the model that is the parent, like the server model, doesn't know about the children yet. So we actually want to add a has many, and let's just say has many channels. But because the class name is not just channel, it's actually server channel, we have to specify our class name just like we did up here. So I can set class name to server channel, and we might have to set foreign key just to server ID, possibly. Although I think this should be fine. All right, cool. So now that we got that set up, let's go back into our app, and what we'll probably do, I guess kind of what I'm thinking is just adding another sidebar, because we need some option to create channels. So it would be very similar to the one that we already created. So let me see how I could add that. If I go over to, let's go to the server show page. So I'm gonna go to the app views servers in the show page. And then what we'll do is I'm going to add another div around our content. I'm going to make this flex so that it positions the items left to right. And we can still have our element for the chat and everything. And then what I'll probably do is I'll render a new partial. I'll just call it sidebar again, although that might get confusing because we have a dashboard sidebar and we have a server sidebar. So, but yeah, I don't think it's that bad. So we can just render sidebar like this. And then let's create that partial. So inside of the servers folder, I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call it underscore sidebar.html.erb. Now inside of the sidebar, I'm honestly just going to go back to the dashboard sidebar, and I'll just copy this code. So it's actually way different because we're not going to be rendering the own servers. I just didn't really feel like doing all this work. So now for the link to create server, I'm going to change that to create channel. And then for the path, it's going to be namespace. That's one thing to realize. So it's going to be new server underscore channel path. And then we have to pass in the server. So we have that server instance variable right here. And as far as the turbo frame, we're actually already inside of the turbo frame on that show page. So we don't even need to specify it here. It should already know to navigate that. So now when we click, okay, that looks pretty cool. So we get that secondary sidebar that pops out. And one thing we might want to do is make it a slightly different color, just so we know that it's a different sidebar. So I'm going to make it slightly lighter. And boom, now you can see we have the server sidebar here, the channel sidebar here. And if we click create channel, boom, it brings us to that new channel page. Interesting. One thing is that we did get a namespace route, but it doesn't really seem like it's set up the right way. Oh wait, yeah, that is weird. So let's go over to the config routes.rb, and I just want to verify that everything looks right. Okay, so we have a namespace server and a resources channel, so that's not right actually. What I want to do instead is I want to nest the routing. So instead of doing this namespace, let's just delete that. And I'm actually going to add a block to our resources servers, just like this, and I'll drop in resources channels. So now we have a namespace, or now we have a nested route, but I actually also do want the namespace, because if you just set it up like this, it's going to expect a plain channels controller, and it doesn't expect the namespace servers channels. So we have to add is a scope. So we can say scope module servers do wrap this, and now it should have the nested routing plus the scoped module namespace. So I'm just going to go ahead and go back to our server show page, click create, and now we actually get a new error, uninitialized constant servers. So let me go and check out our controller code. Let's see what the scaffold generated. So if we go to app controllers, oh, we have a server. I see. It was supposed to be plural, but it's singular. I mean, I don't know if it was supposed to be plural, but I'm going to make it plural actually. So I'm going to rename this to servers. And then inside of our channels controller, I'm going to add an S to make this plural. So it's servers : channels controller. Because I guess I forgot the S inside of the scaffold, which that could have caused some problems. So now if we try to create it again, oh right, now we're missing the template because I think on the views it also has the wrong name. So I'm gonna go over to app, views, and oh look, yeah, look at that. So we have two folders. We have a server singular folder and we have a servers folder. But I actually just wanted only the servers. So let's see if we can drag this channels folder into our servers folder, which looks like we can. And then I'll just delete the singular server folder. Boom. And that should fix all those issues. Yep, just like that. The URL is correct because it's namespaced. So it's going to be the server. This is the ID, which is going to allow us to look up that server. And then we're going to be able to create the channel for the server. This is really cool. It does look like when we click the link, for whatever reason, it's not triggering it in the turbo frame. I think it might be because we added that target top. If you guys remember, we added target top to the turbo frame, the dashboard show page. So if I go to dashboard show page, yeah, we have target top, which means when you click a link inside of it, it's not going to navigate the turbo frame anymore. It's actually going to navigate the top of the page. So we actually want to get rid of this. And instead, we want to add target top to, like the reason that we even had that there was because when we were messing with the servers form, it had some like unexpected things where it would like redirect, but it wouldn't show the new server on the sidebar. So I actually wanted to do a full page reload. So what we can do is on the form width, let's just add that. I think we just add target top and that should have the right results. Let's try it out though. Oh, we get an error. So we actually need to put that inside of the parentheses. Try this again. So when I click new server, I'm going to try to create server, and oh look, so it redirected, but I mean it navigated the turbo frame, but it didn't pop up the new server here. So actually that wasn't right, adding target top, but I think we can add data turbo frame top, and it has that same kind of result. If we do it like this, so it's going to navigate the full page. So if I do server 6, create new server, boom, just like that, we got the server on the side. So I think that looks pretty good. Although one thing, as you can see, we actually navigated to, that was interesting because we navigated back to the main page, but we might actually want to navigate to the server, but we can always handle that later. I don't think that's a big deal right now. Let's just make sure that this create channel is working. So if I click create channel, boom, now we do get the turbo frame is navigating, but we don't have the matching turbo frame. If you guys remember, we always have to make the matching turbo frame if you want the content to get replaced. So what I'll do is, yeah, for creating channel, I'm going to go over to servers, channels, new, and I'll just wrap this in a turbo frame. Do turbo frame tag, dashboard. It's the same matching turbo frame. I'm going to close this out. So now we can click here, create the new channel, and then we could also fix that back button so that it's not just going back to channels. We could say like cancel, and then we'll just go back to the server page. So we can just pass in server. Now if we want to cancel out, technically it should work, but for whatever reason it's not. And we click cancel. Oh, I don't think it's going to the right place. Oh, maybe we don't have server defined in the controller. Let me go over to app controllers and then servers channels. And let's see if we even have server defined. Yeah, we don't have any code setting the server. So that's something we have to do right away. So I'm going to add a before action to the very top, and I'll say set server. Because since we have that server ID getting passed in, we're going to be able to set that, but we have to define the method for this. I'm going to add a new method in the private section called set server. And we're going to define this server instance variable by finding the server with the params server ID, just like that. And that should fix that issue. So we create channel, we press cancel, and it brings us right back to the server page. So that's very cool. And then if we wanted to style this like we did the other page, like the create server page, so that it looks pretty nice right here in the center, I do want to do that. So I might just go over to the views, servers, new page, and then try to just copy some of this code. So I'm going to copy these two divs and go over to now the channels new page, and I'll just replace this top level div, something like this. Make sure that I have the right amount of closing divs. Let's see how that helps. So if I go create channel, already it's looking pretty great. Now one thing is that it's asking for the server ID in the form, which that's something that we don't want to allow. We had to remove that from the other form. It's just something that happens when you do scaffolds. You can sometimes like add stuff like this in the form. So let's go to the channels form, and I'm just going to remove server ID right here. We can also add the light text to the label over here. And back on the new page for the title for new channel, we make this light just like we did before. And you know what I'm going to do also? I'm going to go to the controllers, and I'm going to remove the ability for the permission, I'm going to remove server ID from the permitted params. So if we look down here at channels, we have this server channel params where we're allowing only the trusted parameters. Now this is like the reason why your Rails app is secure. And so that hackers and people, they can't just update all the stuff on the model. They can only update the stuff that you do permit. So you want to make sure that you don't have something like server ID, because then they could totally hack it and like create a channel with a different server ID. And yeah, we don't want to allow that. So I'm going to remove server ID from permitted params. And I think I forgot to do that on the servers controller too. So if we go into servers controller, we're allowing the user to pass in the owner ID, which that is a really big security vulnerability. So I want to remove that so that instead of them passing it in, it's only going to use the current user, and there's no ability to kind of hack it. So that's already like 100% more secure. If we go back, let's see if we can create a new channel. Let me just call this like chill lounge, just a chat channel to chill out in. I'm going to click create. Oh, and we do get an error. So it says that the server must exist. So I think what's happening is inside of our channels controller, we're not creating a server. We're not creating the channel with the server. We're actually just creating it by itself. So I'll change this to use the instance variable that we set, so server, and say server.channels.new. So now we're going to create the channel off of the server that we already have. And then down here when we're saving, I already know that this is not going to be really correct. So what we'll do is I'll just remove this respond to like I did before on the other page. And I'm going to remove the JSON format. And I'm just going to slim this down basically, just like this. And instead of redirecting the server channel, let's just redirect the server right now because we know that that's already set up. All right, so let's go to our server 6. I'm going to create new channel, chill lounge, press create. Boom, I think it did work, although we're not rendering the channels like we are for the server. So let me go ahead and add that. So let's head over to the app views servers, or actually, where is it? Server sidebar. And inside of here, we just need to render all of the channels. I'm going to do some embedded Ruby, and we'll just say server.channels each do channel. We'll end this out. And for now, I'm just going to keep it simple. Go back to the dashboard sidebar, copy this same code, drop it in. But instead of linking to server, we want to link to, actually, I'm going to pass in an array because we have a nested route. This is one easy way that you can create the route by just passing it in as an array. So first you put the first item, which is server, and then you put the second item, which is channel, and it'll set up that whole route, like, server underscore channel path. It's already going to know to look for that. So if we reload, oh, interesting. We get an error because there's like two. It says undefined method server underscore server channel path. I have no idea why it's saying that. Huh. Maybe it's just something to do with my nesting. I don't know. Oh, it says, oh, wait, hold up. We actually had a typo here. We're passing in server name. I actually want to pass a channel name. I don't really think that was a problem. For some reason, the nesting, something is messed up. I'm not sure. So instead, we can just put the path manually, which would be server underscore channel path. Then we'll pass in at server, and we'll pass in channel. And let's check this out. All right, so it looks like it is showing up. Now the background color, I guess we need to change that background color so it stands out because it's the same as our sidebar. So I'm gonna make it slightly lighter. And boom, now when we click on the server, we can view the channels. And when we click on a channel, it should actually bring us to that channel page, which would just be the chat room. But right now we are getting an error because, I don't know, it's like, it looks like it's something with the nesting. It's so weird. Maybe just the way that I wrote the code, I think I messed it up. Because we did the singular namespace, the server channel instead of servers channels. I don't even know. But we're probably going to get rid of all the stuff on the show page anyways. So let's go to channels show page. And this is what it looks like right now. So actually, I'm just going to delete that all. And I'm going to put a turbo frame tag for dashboard. Just like this. There we go. And I'll probably go over to the servers show page. And I'm just going to copy this simple code that we had for that server show page. I'll do the same thing for channel. So it's just going to print out the name. And of course, I'm going to change the server variable to channel, although I think it's server underscore channel. Just how the scaffold set it up. And it looks like there was an error. Oh, I forgot to add a do to make this a block. So if we reload, boom, now we have our chill lounge. And if I just go back to home and click on our chill lounge, boom, it's showing up. This looks great. Although we actually probably want to show that sidebar still. It looks like it's just closing it out. We probably do want to show that still. So I'll actually go back to the server show page and I'll copy all of this code, including the sidebar, then drop this into the channels show page. Now, one thing I know already is that we're going to get an error because it's not going to know where the sidebar partial is. If we reload, I'll show you that. So we get the error. It says missing partial sidebar because that sidebar is actually inside the servers folder and not the channels, not the servers channels. So we're going to manually set the path by just saying server/sidebar. And that should fix that error. So boom, now we get the sidebar on the side. So if we navigate here again, click chill lounge. Huh. For some reason it's saying server 6. It should have actually went into the lounge. Oh look, guys, look, when I recopied the code, it's still showing the server name instead of the channel. I want to say channel.name. Or actually not channel name, server underscore channel name. So if we click, boom, now we're inside the channel. This is awesome. So yeah, now we have all of these, sidebars. We're able to click through our different servers, click into a channel. The last thing to really do, or not the last thing, there's actually a bunch of things to do, but the next thing we might do is just add in a chat so that we can chat. But we also could add in the ability to invite other users, like add members to your server, and then the members could chat inside of the channels. So I don't know. Do we do members or chats first? I think we'll do chats first, just because we can already test it out by ourselves, and then when we want to invite other users, we can add in that member option. Oops. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is just add in the chat functionality, because then at least we can test it out chatting with ourselves, and then we can go to adding in other users to the chat. So to do that, well, we are going to need, I think, just one other model, which would be the messages. So it might be like channel messages. So take a look at how we could do that. So if we go to that channel show page, let's see what we're rendering. So right now we just have like this whole thing, and really this part is the main section of our chat. So where we're just doing like this width full height screen. So I'm gonna add flex call, and we can leave like this top text, and we might even end up putting buttons up here later. And let's just go ahead and add another div underneath it, which will be for our chat section. Just do like height full on this. And what we're probably gonna have is like we'll render all of the messages, and then at the bottom we'll put the form. So we kind of don't even need to do another scaffold, because you'll notice eventually that the scaffolds generate a lot of stuff that we don't even use. Like I basically end up just deleting a lot of the stuff. So that's one reason not to use scaffolds, but they also can be pretty helpful as a beginner if you don't want to like manually add all these files, and also helps you just learn how the Rails framework usually like works and how people like to build their stuff. Because it is good to build it in this CRUD setup, so you don't have like all these additional files that aren't consistent with the edit, new, show, like that kind of vibe. Although really you can build your apps however you want it, if we're being real. So what we'll probably have is something like server channel.messages, and we'll loop through those, although we don't have that model yet. So let's just go ahead and generate a new model. So I'll go over to the terminal. I'm going to clear this out, and then I'm going to generate a model. So instead of scaffolding, I don't think we really need to do that right now. So I'm going to generate a new model. So we'll do RailsG model, and we can do channel. I don't know if we need singular or plural. I think I'll just do singular. So channel slash messages, and it should already know to do singular, because usually in Rails you don't have plural models, but you might have a plural namespace. So now on this message, I guess let's just do it singular just to avoid any confusion. So we have a channel slash message. Now, as far as the attributes for a message, you guys can probably think about what you'd want for your attributes, but the most simplest thing is just like the body of the text. We can say body and then colon text. So that could be, a large amount of text or a small amount of text. And then we're also going to have it belong to a channel, of course. I think we have to do server underscore channel belongs to, because that's the database table that we created with server underscore channel. So I want to make sure that that's set up correctly. And then we'll also do the user belongs to, because we're going to have a user that sent the message. And I think that's really all we need for now. You can press enter. And if you want to take a look at the migration, just make sure that everything looks right. We can run a cat on that file. And we see that we have the text body belongs to server channel and it belongs to user. So that looks good. So now I'll migrate the database with RailsDB migrate. And we now have our new channel messages model. So now I'm going to restart the server in dev and go back to my app and take a look at this channel right here. So now we're going to have to add in the form. That's probably the next thing that we'll do, so that we can create the new messages. So what I'll do is I'll go into our servers channels show page, and inside of this div right here, I'm just going to get started on the form. We do form width, and for the URL, we don't have a URL yet because I didn't do the scaffolds. So actually, we're going to need a controller and a URL for this creating of messages. So let's go ahead and head over to the config routes.rb real quick. And I'm going to, I guess we could scope it again inside of here. Or I don't know if we really want that full URL, but I guess it doesn't hurt. So what we could do, let's just do another scoping. It's going to be a long URL, but that doesn't really matter to me. We can do resources do on the channels, and I'm going to do another scope module channels do. And finally, we'll add the resources messages, and I'm going to do only create because we really don't need any other routes except for the create for creating new messages. So now we have the route set up. We can go back to the show page and actually put in the route and just make sure that it works. So I think what we need is server underscore channel underscore messages path. And we have to, of course, pass in the server and the server channel. And then I'm just going to do a block. And I'm going to reload and just make sure that everything works. So if we reload, go back to our lounge. I don't see any issues, so I think everything does work. Why don't we just quickly, before we go and add the controller, let's just add some simple content here for the form. So all we really have is like the body text. We can do f.text area for body. And then we can do a simple submit button. Reload and take a look at this. So now we do have our form showing up. Although we probably want to put it down at the bottom. So that's one thing we can quickly do. And also, of course, make it look less ugly. I think what I'll do is for this form, we can give this a fixed height. Let's just say we only want it to be like height 40, take up the full width. And then we can have another div up here, which could probably, I don't know if we could just say like height full. Because that might not actually take up all that space. Oh wait, it totally does. No, it totally does. So we can say height full, it does take up the space, and then we leave some room at the bottom, so that's perfect. And the only reason I did the pink was just to test that out, to make sure that it is taking up the space. That looks pretty good. Now what I'll probably do is inside of this channel show page, we can add some styling to this form to make this look a little bit better. So I'm going to go down to this div right here, and I'm going to add a div right inside of here. We do flex, and then I'm also going to actually add the relative class because I want to, instead of using a submit button, I'm going to add like an icon. So we don't just have this text that says save. We can actually do a custom icon. I'll show you guys how to do that in a second. Let's close out this div. Make sure that everything's looking good. So we just have this text field right here, very small. I'm going to try to make it take up the full width real quick. So let's go on the text area. I'm going to add a class, put width full, and boom, just like that, we have our text area taking up the full width. That already looks pretty good. What we can do is probably add some padding to this element right here, and I'm going to add rounded to our text area. Also, I don't really like the white background. I want to make that darker. Let's do BG gray 700, and we can do light text. And oh, we already have rounded. So let's take a look at how that looks. Oh, boom. Yeah, the already is looking really good. Although one thing I'm noticing is that it kind of like is out of the scroll width. So I realized before I said like that I was going to use min height screen for our main page, but we probably only want it to take up the, the original height of the page. So there's a few things that we could change right there. If I go back to the dashboard show, which that's where all of this content is even getting rendered, you see that on this line, I'm setting the min height to screen. Instead, I'm going to change this to just use height screen. And then I'm going to reload. And it's still taking up kind of more space than we're expecting, and that's because the nav bar at the top is not actually working like a regular nav bar, getting rendered at the top of the page, and it's taking up space. So I'm going to go over to the views layouts nav bar, and I'm going to add a fixed class and then top 0. So now it should get out of the way of the rest of our stuff. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Although now some of our content is getting, it's not showing up here because this nav bar, it's height 16 and it's kind of overlaying with our stuff now. So to fix that, we kind of just have to add the padding. If I go over to the show page, let's just add padding top 16 so that we can get all of our stuff to fit underneath the navbar. But it still should only take up the height of the screen, although it looks like the sidebar, for whatever reason, is kind of overflowing. But we can fix that by adding overflow hidden to this element, and now it should totally just, yeah, there's not even the option to scroll down, so I think that works. And if we go in here, click over to our chill lounge. Ooh, one thing I noticed is our text area is kind of getting pushed under, which is not good. I'm going to have to make sure that that is working correctly. So let's go back to the server's channels show page. And I think I'm going to edit right here. So this div where we're taking up the full height, we can just add in a custom height. So let's say like 80 view height and see if that gives us enough space. You know what? I think that's perfect. It's actually really good. But there still is the option to resize the fields, which means that the user could kind of like stretch it so that the UI does kind of break. But what you can do is you can just remove the option for resize by doing style and then set resize to none. And if we come back in here, boom, we no longer have that problem. Although I might even want this text field to be a bit larger because it looks pretty small. So let's make sure that's taking up the full height. I'm doing height full. And then I'm going to increase this from 40 to maybe 64. Let's see. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add a color on here just so I can make sure that it's taking up the right amount of space. So on this element where we have the height, I'm going to add a pink background. Okay, so this is the space that it should be taking up, but it looks like our text area is only taking up about half of it, even though I have the height full. So maybe it's the div that's in the middle between these. I think we need to add a height full too. Still not really showing up correctly. Maybe I have to add flex to this top level div. Top level. Oh wow. Okay, that kind of broke some things. That's so weird. So maybe I have to add width full to this element now. Why is this? What is happening? Why did that go so small? It's actually so random. So sometimes there's some weird stuff with like CSS, but I think you guys already probably understand that. Like what is happening? All right, let's remove the flex class because that obviously didn't help. I want to figure out why this isn't taking up the full height. Even though, so you can kind of like inspect in the HTML and make sure that everything's working. So right here, this is taking up full height, but the form is not for whatever reason. It looks like the form is like scoped down. So one option is to actually add the class to our form. I just set in class right here, set this to height full. Let's see if that helps. So, I mean, it does kind of help, although now it looks like it's taking up way more space than we have available. So I'm going to try to reduce this height 64 to maybe height 40 again and see how that looks. No, it's still not really working correctly. I wonder if it's because of the height 80 view height. I'm going to try to reduce that to 60 just for a second. All right, already we're getting better progress. Although now it's kind of like there's a little bit of space at the bottom. So we could increase this height of the message section. This is where the messages are going to be, by the way. Try to increase this to 70 view height. And you know what? I think this looks perfect right here. I'm just going to remove that pink background, and boom, we just have the text field right here. We can enter in our text or whatever message we have. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a nice little submit button on the right side. And I told you guys I was going to do that trick. So instead of just saying like f.submit, you can do a button tag. You can have a button tag type submit, and we can put an icon inside of this, like a cool looking icon. So I usually go to hero icons for my icons because they're all completely free to use, and yeah, it just works really well with Rails. So I'm going to go and find this paper airplane. I think that's pretty standard icon to use. And I'm going to drop this inside of that button tag. And then we can set a width on this. Let's say like width 10. I'm going to try to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to make it lighter. Let's see. It looks like there was an error because, oh, I forgot to add the do for this button tag, because we are trying to pass in content and I have the end. So you need to make sure that you have a do right here. And if we reload, oh, check that out. We do have the send icon over there. But what I actually want to do is I want to layer it on top so it kind of looks like it's inside of the text area. And to do that, I'm going to add an absolute class to the button. And then because we have relative right here on this wrapping element, it knows that it's only going to be absolute relative to this one element. So that's a kind of cool CSS tip that I picked up. So we can say absolute top 0, and let's do right 0. And if we reload and go back, you'll see that it is perfectly inside the element, although the positioning is a little bit messed up. I'm going to try to center it in the middle, so we can just add like some custom values. Let's say right 4, top 8. Give that a try. It's a little better. I might increase the right a little bit. Let's do right 6, top 14, and go back here. Oh, yeah, that looks perfect to me. So now the other thing is that when you hover on it, you can't really tell that it is an icon because there's no effect. So I'm going to go to this button tag and I'm going to add cursor pointer. And we can also add some, like I kind of want to make it a round button with a background. So let's do PG Gray 500, P3, and then rounded full. And take a look at how that looks. All right, already I think this looks pretty good. Although now because we added the padding, I think we could reduce the top a little bit. So we could say top 12. And I think that's perfect. And we can even add a little hover effect on the button. So we could say hover PG Indigo 500. You totally know when you hover, it's like boom, are you ready to send the message? We could even make it kind of like increase the size a little bit. We could say hover scale 105. And boom, we have a nice fun button. All right, this is coming along really well. We press send. Oh, it looks like we got an error. Have uninitialized constant servers : channels. That was weird. So if we look at the path, we're going to server channel messages path. So that should be fine. But I already know we don't have the controller created yet. But I don't know why we're seeing that error. We have the scoping, it should be fine. I'm not sure. Come in here. Oh, you know what? I think this error just means that there is no, servers channels namespace. So let's just go and add our controller, and I think we should be able to get past that issue. So what we need to do is inside of our controllers servers folder, I'm going to create another folder called channels. And then inside of there, I'm going to create our messages controller. And then let's create our class by adding these modules. We're going to have module servers and module channels. This is just for namespacing. And then finally, we can add our class messages controller. And this is just going to inherit from the application controller. And if you guys remember, the only action that we're going to have on this messages controller is for creating the messages. So we can do def create. And now we can actually set up our code. So first of all, we're probably gonna have to set the server and the channel and the message, or not the message, we're gonna create the message. So let's get started with setting the server. So we can say server equals server.find params server underscore ID. And we're gonna do channel equals off of the server channels dot find params channel ID. These are all things that are going to be coming through that URL. And then finally, we can create the message by saying message equals channel.messages create. And then we can pass in our message params, which is going to be a method that we define down at the bottom of this controller. So I'm going to add a private section, and then I'm going to define our messages params. It's going to be params dot. Now I know there's a new method that they added, so I'm going to go and try to do it that way. I'm going to go over to the channels controller and just take a look at the server channel params. It looks like the new method is called expect, so we can do .expect, and then we're going to expect this namespace and then whatever parameters are getting passed in. So I'm going to try to do that same sort of vibe. We can say expect. We're going to expect a message namespace, and then we'll pass an array of all of the parameters. So really it's just the body. Now I don't think we're passing in the namespace on the form right now. So we can add that by going to use service channels, the show page, and then on this form width, see, we're not setting a model. So I think we can set, might be like as, say as message, or maybe it's model name or something, but I'm trying to set that, you know, that nested parameter. But we can actually go into the console and look at the request that was sent and see, you know, what was sent. So right here, I actually don't see it. So let's go ahead and just try to redo this. I'm gonna go back to that server, send a new message, and boom. I'm gonna go to the terminal now, and I wanna see what was sent. If we see this post request right here, it looks like we're just passing the body directly. There's no nested like message, you know, hash, which is usually what will happen. So another option is just to set the model. We can say model equals server channel.messages.new. And now it'll already know to use this, you know, that model as the nesting. But I think that'll bring us to our next error. It says we don't have a messages defined for the server channel. And that goes back to, if you guys remember, when you generate a new model or you generate a scaffold, the model that you create will know about the parent, but the parent doesn't know about the child until you add that link. We have to go and manually add that link to our model. Let's go over to the app models and let's look for the channel model. Oh, not this. Look, this is actually what I was talking about. Remember how I said that channel might be already taken? It's literally right here. There's a models channel, and that's just for, I guess that's part of action cable or whatever. So that's a good thing that we added our own namespace. So let's go to models. I think it's channel message right here. So right here, this looks good. Actually, everything's set up here. But if we go to server channel, here we go. That's where we have to add the link. So I'm going to add as many messages. And I'm going to specifically set the class name because, again, it's not going to know, you know, what class to use. It's just going to look for like a regular message model, which we don't have. What we do have is this right here. Whoops. So the channel : message. So I'm going to put that in the class name. So now we have many messages. It already knows to look for this class name. And then for the foreign key, I guess we might as well set this. It would be whatever what did we set? I don't remember. Let me go and look. So let's go to db migrate, go to the latest one. Okay, it belongs to server channel. So it'd be server channel _ ID. Like this. We set that foreign key to make sure that everything knows what we're talking about. Cool. So now if we go back, the form does work properly. And if I send my message, all right, here we go. So it looks like the param is missing because now it's using channel message instead of message. So I guess I'll just update our controller to look for the new parameter. So let's go to servers, channels, messages controller. And instead of looking for a message, we're going to look for channel message, and we're going to permit these attributes. And then inside of the create action, this should be fine. So we're going to create that new message. What we probably want to do is after we create the message, actually, one thing I noticed, we're not setting the user. So we're creating a message for channel, but we're never setting user. So what we actually want to do is instead of doing create, let's say new, and then we'll be able to set that user by saying message.user equals current user. And then we can check if this saved. So if message save, let's redirect to, actually, since we don't have like a new action, we might just want to redirect anyways, even if it doesn't save. We can just say redirect to, and I think what we want to do is go back to the channel page. So let's say redirect to server underscore channel path, and then we'll pass in the server and the channel. I think that should work. Let me just go back here and let's try to send a message. Look, it actually sent. Well, I think it sent because there wasn't any errors, but we're not rendering out the messages right now. So that's kind of like the next thing that we'll add. So let's just jump straight into that. So I'm going to go over to the app views, servers, channels, show page. And inside of here, right in this section with the height, 70 view height, that's where I was going to render the messages. So let's just go ahead and do that. Let's say server channel.messages each do message. Just like that. And we also probably want to order them real quick because I always know that the order gets messed up. So let's say order created at, would it be ascending or descending? We want to show the latest, I think we want to show the newest ones at the bottom. So instead of descending, it's actually ascending. I think. Created at, well, we can always figure that out later. So created at ascending. And inside of here, let's add our message. I'm going to just do a simple UI for now. So let's just, I mean, it could be as simple as just printing out the body. So let's do message.body. Just make sure that this works before I go into like styling. I don't see any messages. That's weird. I'm going to go in the console, do rel C, and I'm going to check channel message. Wait, channel : message dot count. We don't have any channel messages, so I guess it didn't really go through. There must have been some error where it didn't save. What I'll do is I'm going to leave the console open to the left, and I'm going to try to go and create a message again and see if there's any errors. So, I mean, it didn't look like there was an error, but it also didn't save for whatever reason. So let's go back to this controller. Let's see what's happening. Oh, look, guys, I forgot to say save. It's hilarious. So yeah, of course, after we initialize the message model, set the user, we definitely want to save. So I'm going to reload, go back, say hey. And, oh, we do get an error saying missing model class server channel for the channel message. Huh. Server channel. Oh, so I guess the association that it's looking for, the model that it's looking for isn't correct because it's looking for it all in one word, but we actually separate this with colons. So where we want to look is the app models channel message. Oh, right here. So we're saying belongs to server channel, but we don't actually have like a server channel. What they're going to look for is, server channel. We actually want to look for server : channel. So all we have to do is just set the class name here as well, like we've done in those other places. So now it's going to look for the correct namespace model. All right, so let's go back in here. We have no messages. We should be able to create the first one and say, hey, check it out. We got the hey message right up here. That's incredible. The next thing we could probably do is just, add a little bit of styling, whatever. Let's go to, what was it? We just put it straight up on the channel show page. So we might want to even put this into a partial. Why not? Let's render message parcel. And we'll pass in message right here. And then inside of that servers channels folder, I'm going to create a new file called underscore message.html.erb. We can just drop in this content. We have that message body, and then we can do a little bit of styling here. So we like padding, add a little background, maybe make the text larger and lighter. All right, check that out. We get our message showing up. Although usually, yeah, I'm probably gonna add some margin like to the sides and like make it either go to the left or the right. I think in Discord, maybe like your messages go to the right and the other people's messages go to the left. That's usually how it is in chats. I don't know how they do it on Discord. I don't really remember. They might just put it all on the same side. I think let's just start by putting it all on the left side, and then we can think if we even want to do that later. So inside this message parcel, let's just add MR auto. So that should add margin to the right, so it's not just taking up the full width, although it still looks like it is for whatever reason. So I'm going to go back to the show page, and what I'll do is on this div, I'm going to add flex call class. I think that should fix it. Yep, that already helps a lot. And I also want to add some padding because I don't like how the message is just right on the side. So let's add px4. And boom, now we at least have some padding. And then we might want to add a min height, or a min width, I mean. Because then if someone says like something really short, it doesn't just have like this small element. We could still have a little bit of space. So back on the message partial, we could add min width. And let me just say like XL. I think that'll work. There we go. So at the minimum, it's going to be this XL, although we could probably change that to like large. We don't need XL. And let's test it out. Let's test it out if this works again. We say yo, and it does show up, although we could probably add some padding between these elements. So I guess I'll go back to the show page. I am going to add margin top on this just so that our messages aren't directly, actually I don't want to mess up the rest of the styling in margin top. We'll totally do that. Let's add padding top instead. And then what I'll do is I'll add gap between each message by just saying gap 4. Now it should add space between each message. That's already really incredible. Now, one other quick thing is we can add the user who actually sent the message. We can put their username somewhere in this message parcel. So let's go back to the message, and I'm going to add a flex call class, and then I'm going to put the body inside of a p tag. Why not? I'm going to put a span tag for the username. Just say like sent by. Then we'll do the message.user.username. All right, if we reload, boom, it says the user who sent it. This is already a great experience. We can basically just keep sending messages. Although now it gets to the point where the messages are overflowing. So we're gonna need this element to be scrollable. Let's go back to the channel show page, and let's just say overflow y scroll. So we know that that element can definitely be scrolled, and boom, already this is a great show experience. I think that's pretty awesome. We got chat rooms, channels, everything set up. Only next thing, kind of like the last thing I think we had to do is just add in the ability to invite other people to your room, talk to them. This has already been so crazy. We've done so much coding. I can't believe we got to this point. This is beautiful, actually. I'm gonna create another channel. lol's room. Just gonna be having some fun, and I want to make sure that this works too. So it does totally work. So we have the chill lounge, we also have this room, and of course we can create as many channels as we want, as many servers as we want. Yeah, it's beautiful. All right, so now let's build a feature to allow you to add members to your server. So in Discord, usually how it goes is you have the ability to create an invite link for a particular server, and then anybody who gets that invite link can join the server and then be able to talk in it. So let's go ahead and add that feature. So we can kind of think like, where do we want that button to be? I might just put it straight up on the server show page for now. So if we go to servers, show page, let me close this out. Right up here we have there's the title. So like the server show page is actually super simple. What I'll probably do is maybe I'll just have a div underneath. What we do with full flex justify. Then we can put any options that we want to show for only the user, because for only the owner, because only the owner should be able to see these buttons anyways. So we can just say wrap this div in a check. We could check if at server.owner is equal to the current user, and in that case we'll have any buttons that we want the owner of this server to be able to see, and one of them will just be a link to create invite link. And this is going to go to some path that we are going to generate because we don't have a path for this yet. But let me just style this a little bit. I guess I'll turn this into a button. Let's do Indigo. Take a look at this. So if we go to the server, that's weird. There's like a little UI glitch. Okay, no problem. It looks like the button is over here. Oh, I guess we already have an Indigo background. Let me just remove that because we don't really need this anymore now that we've figured out those UI bugs. Yeah, this honestly looks so good. We have this create invite link button now, and clicking that should bring us to, that page to create the invite links. So we don't really have anything like that now, and it's actually, I think this would require another model and, some more pages. So we're going to get to that in just 1 second. So now we have this, create invite link button, but we don't have the page for actually creating it, and like the form and everything. So that's probably the first thing that we can work on adding. So I'm just going to open up the code editor. And now let's go straight over to config routes.rb. And inside of this config routes.rb, we can figure out where the invite link route should probably be. I think it should be inside of servers because you're going to send invite links to a server. So what I'll do is I'll add a resources invite links, and then I'm going to say it's only going to be the new and the create action. And yeah, so we're going to have a new page and then a create action. Oh, whoops. So now that we have that route set up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the controllers and then the servers folder, and I'm going to create that new file for invite links controller.rb. We're going to have the module servers and then the class for the invite links controller. And this is going to inherit from application controller. And then we could do def create. Oh, and it's also going to have a new action. So one thing we're probably going to want to get into also is like authorization. Make sure that nobody else except for the owner can actually get to this route, even if they try to hack the URL. And even though we're hiding the button, we only show that to the owner on the page. If someone's smart enough, they could totally hack the URL and get around that. So we might as well cover that case by just adding before action say authorize owner, and that'll be a method that we define. So I'll just put this down at the bottom. And right here, what we'll do is we'll redirect to root path unless the server.owner is equal to the current user. And this will just authorize, make sure that only the owner can view these two routes. Now, we also need to set the server before we do this. So I'm just going to add set server as a method 2 that we're going to run. And this is going to set that server instance variable. So we can say server equals. And actually, another way to kind of make this more secure, instead of just setting server by the ID, which that's always way less secure because, like, again, if someone's smart enough, they can actually hack it. So instead, we'll say current user owned servers find. So we're only going to be able to find servers that a user owns. That's another important thing. And then we'll just pass in the params server underscore ID. And now we should have that server created. So the next thing is we're going to actually have an invite link model, which we don't have yet. So I think a server will have many invite links. So let's go ahead and generate that new model by going to the console. And I'm just going to zoom in here and let's generate a new model. So I'll do Rails G model, and I'm going to go with the same namespace that we've been doing. So I'll do server / invite link, and then we'll just say, this belongs to server. And it's also going to have like any fields that you think you should have on this invite link. I think all we're going to have is like it should have a unique ID. So if you've ever been to Discord, when you get an invite link, it's usually like a URL, it's like discord.com/invite, and then / some unique ID for that particular server. So we're going to need something like that. So I might just create another field called like link, or we could just even say unique ID. And then this is going to be type unique. So instead of string, it's actually just type unique like this. And I think it's already going to be a string by default, but this is just making sure that it is unique. And I'll show you what that means. But let's press enter to generate this model. Again, it's going to ask if you want to override the server. Don't override it because we have important code in there already. So just say N for no. And now let's take a look at that migration. So I'm going to cat this file. And as you can see, we're setting up a new table, server underscore invite underscore links, which belongs to server. It has a unique ID. And then we also have this index, which is verifying that, every unique ID is actually unique. So unique true. So now let's migrate the database with Rails DB migrate. And boom, we now have that server invite link model. So what I'm actually going to do is we also have to go and edit the app models server invite link. So let's take a look at that real quick. This is actually set up correctly. So we have a server invite link belongs to server. But if you go over to server, it doesn't know about the invite links yet. So I'm going to add that has many invite links. And then we'll do class name because it has to look for the specific class, of course. So we have to say server : invite link. And then for the foreign key, I don't think we have to actually set this, because this is already basic. We probably didn't even need to set this for the channels, but yeah, whatever. I'm just going to leave that. Now let's go back to the controller, and I'm going to initialize a new invite link on the new actions. We can say invite link equals server.invitelinks.new. And we're also going to need the route for this. But let's get to that. So if I reload, come back here, what I want to do is I want to change this URL of the create invite link. Right now we just have a blank URL, so I want to change that to our new path that we added. So I'm going to go over to the views servers show page. And then right here on create invite link, we have this placeholder. I'm going to replace that now with our new path, which is going to be new server underscore invite link path. And then we're going to have to pass in the server right here. And if we reload, it looks like that works. So if we do press the button, it's it says that we're missing a template because we have not added this page yet. So we can fix that by adding the page for that path. So what we're going to do is go to the views servers, and we need to create a new folder for invite links. So do invite underscore links, and then I'm going to create a new file, new HTML.erb, and inside of here we'll have the code for that invite link form. So one thing we're going to want to do is add the TurboFrame tag dashboard. That's what we're using to kind of like deconstruct our app to make it more like a single page app. And now if you go and click create invite link, boom, you would see it, although we don't have a form yet. So we can just go ahead and add that form. So we'll do form width. I'm going to set the URL to the server underscore invite links path. And then pass in the server, of course. And for the model, since we do have an invite link variable that I set, we can pass that in too. And I'm going to do f. Now for the invite link, actually, now that I think about it, the invite link doesn't really have any attributes, but one thing that they usually do have on Discord is an expiration. So we forgot to add expiration, but that's probably something that we want to have, like how long does it expire? Is it going to be like 7 days, 2 weeks, a month? But honestly, that might just be another feature, I guess. I wonder how we're going to do this. So maybe, actually, to keep it simple, maybe we don't even need a new page, now that I think about it. Maybe this link right here, if we, like, just for now, right, until we build that feature, you can keep it simple. So when you press create invite link, it just creates it automatically, and then it allows you to copy it, because that's kind of, I think that's how they do it in Discord. But then, of course, they have the option to add the expiration date. But I don't even really know if I want to build that just yet. We can build that as like an additional feature. So yeah, now that I think about it, maybe we'll just get rid of this new path. So we can probably delete this whole, or actually no, you know what, I'm going to have a show page. So we'll be able to show the invite link, allow the user to copy it to the clipboard or something. And we don't need this form width anymore. And I'm also going to go back to the controllers, the servers, invite links controller. And let's just get rid of this new path. Instead, we're going to have def show. And then let's go back to the server show page. So right here for create invite link, instead of going to the new path, it could just go to the create path, which is server underscore invite underscore links path. And then we have to make it send a post request instead of the default get request. I'm going to add a data key. I'm going to set the turbo method to post. It's going to make a post request to this route. And then inside of our controller right here on create, we could just simply say like invite links create, set this to a variable, and then we'll redirect to the show path. So we can say redirect to server invite link path, pass in server, pass in invite link. The other place I'm going to change is in the config routes.rb. So right here on the resources for invite links, we're only setting the new and create. I also want to set the show. Or actually, I want to set the show instead of the new, because we're no longer having that new page. So we're just going to go straight to the create. Like you press the button, it creates the invite link, brings you to the show page. You can copy it. After that, you can't really get back to the old invite link. That's just kind of the functionality for now, because I guess it's easy to build. I think that works with me. And then on the show path, we're going to need to set our invite link. We'll just say server invite links find, and then we can pass in params ID. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good. Although when you create an invite link right now, we're not setting that unique ID. So that's something we need to do right away. So what I would probably do is go over to the models server invite link, and I'll add a before. I'll do before validation callback to set the unique ID. So right here, and then we can also do an if. So we only want to set it if it's not already set. So we can just say if not unique ID present. There we go. And then I'm going to put this method in a private section. Create a set unique ID method, or we can just say self.uniqueID. We're going to set this to secure random.uuid, which is a pretty good way of creating a unique ID, although I'm not sure how this would scale, if I'm being real. Then we can just say save. So something like this. And I think this should work for now. And secure random UUID, it should be pretty secure because it creates like this really long key that probably will always be unique, even when you get to like millions of users. I think companies still use this all the time. Right, that sounds pretty good. So let's see if it works. If I go to the server page, press create invite link, I can't actually tell if it did work. We didn't get any errors, at least I didn't see any errors. So I want to say that it did. If we look in the console, it said it inserted into server invite links. So I think it did create it, but we're just not showing anything on that page. So let's go over to the page. So the app views, servers, invite link show page. And what we're going to want to do is just add that section. So what I'll do is I'm going to copy code from this server show page, just because to be easier, but I'm going to delete this link right here. And I'll just say like the server name invite link as the title. And right underneath it, I'm going to add a div. I'm going to add just a little bit of styling here. Then we could print out whatever the link for the invite is. Right now, I'm just going to start by printing out invite link.uniqueID. This. So let's go back, try to do this again, create invite link, and check it out. It actually created the invite link, and it gives us the unique ID. That's pretty cool. What I'll do, I'm going to make this text larger, a little bit lighter, add some padding. Now we have to think about what the URL will be. So what I'm thinking is let's just do the same thing that Discord does. Do like /invite and then just pass in whatever the ID is. And if our app can find an invite link with that ID, it will allow you to join that server. So to do something like that, what I'll do is I'll go over to the config routes.rb and I'm going to define a new path. So let's do, we could use resources, but I think it's easier to just define the path manually. So it's going to be a get request or a get path, and we'll do /invite/ and then whatever the ID is, we'll just do unique ID. And notice how I'm using a colon. So when you do a colon, Rails knows that this is supposed to be a dynamic path. So whatever is passed in here will get sent over to the params as this, value. So we can say params unique ID now. Now we just have to set what controller is going to handle this. We can say to, and then let's create a new controller called invitations. And we can just handle this on invitations show page. How about that? Invitations. Wait, am I spelling that right? I think I am. All right, so let's go ahead and define that new controller. So I'm gonna go over to the app controllers, create a new file called invitations controller RB. And this is just gonna be a controller on the main level, so it's not nested inside of any modules or anything. It's gonna inherit from application controller, and then it's really just gonna have a show page. Now what we'll do is we'll try to find an invite link with that unique ID. So say invite link equals invite link.find by unique ID. And we'll pass in the params unique ID. And then if we can't find an invite link, we could just show like a message like no invite link found with that ID. But why don't we just handle that on the page? So let's go over to the app views, and we're going to need to create a new folder that matches the name of our controller, which is invitations. So we're going to have an invitations folder in the view. And this is going to have a show template, so show.html.erb. And inside of here, we can handle the people who are actually going to that invite URL. All right, so now we have the ability to create an invite link. This is what it kind of looks like. We just are printing the ID, but really we already know that the path that we're really looking for is going to be our website URL / invite / unique ID. So all we have to do is just show that to the user, and then they're going to be able to copy it themselves. So let's go ahead and handle that real quick by going back to the app views, servers, invite links, show page. All right, and then right inside of here of this div, we're just printing out unique ID. So all we have to do is add, well, the domain. How do we get the domain? Maybe we could do root URL. We'll do /invite. And right here, this is just plain text, but then the embedded Ruby will actually fill in our content. Let's see if that works. Let's reload. Go back to the main server, create invite link. Oh yeah, check it out, it does work. Although there's an additional slash, because I guess when you do root URL, it already has a slash. So all we have to do is just get rid of that second slash. Make sure that that is looking good, so we can create invite link. Cool, and this is what the invite link would look like. And what should happen is you should be able to share this with anybody and allow them to join your Discord server. So let's try that out. Let's go into a new incognito window. I'm going to paste in this URL. Now what happens is it does tell me to sign in, which I guess that's fair. I think you need to be signed in before you can join a server, right? So let's go ahead and try to create, let's sign up and create a new account. So I'm just going to create a little test account. Good to go. Oh yeah, one thing we didn't set is I don't think we're handling like spaces and usernames, because usually you wouldn't want any spaces, or like, you know, you might only permit a certain amount of characters. So we're probably going to want to handle that in a second. But for right now, I'm just going to put in whatever username I want to go with. Let's put in a password. All right, then we sign up. And what happens with Device is after you sign up, it usually will bring you back to the URL that you were trying to visit before. So now we should be on that invitations path. But it looks like we're getting this error, and oh, it's because it's trying to find the invite link. But if you guys remember, I did namespace that, so that's not really the correct thing. So let's go over to the invitations controller. Instead of invite link, it's actually server : invite link. So let's go back, reload, and I'll actually go back to that URL in the browser. So this is what it looks like when somebody goes to your invite link. So obviously it's not very inviting. But all we have to do is just add the code here to kind of like simulate something like Discord. Like I know in Discord, it's basically just a mode out in the center of the page that says like, do you want to join this server? So that's kind of what we'll do. So let's go over to the views invitation show page. And right here on this invitation show page, let's start styling this. I'm just going to do width full, height screen, flex call, item center, add some padding. And this is basically just going to center whatever content we have inside. So then I'm going to add a div class. I'm going to give it a max width. It's usually what I do for those, you know, center elements. And then we can even give it a background too. So let's say like BG Gray 600. And then we're going to put a title. So let's do title with light text. And this will just say like join. And then we'll put the server name. So we should be able to have the server from that invite link, but we have not defined that yet. So let's go ahead and define it in this action. And server is just going to be invite link dot server. Or I guess actually we don't have to define this in the controller. Usually I think it's better to have less defined in the controller just because it'll get messy, especially for something that's so simple as just saying, you know, invite link dot server dot name. But actually, another thing that people usually like is adding delegation. So instead of like all these dots, if you add a delegate method, you're going to be able to just access like an associations method just straight off of the record. And I'll show you what that means. So if we go to the models and let's go to server invite link, and if I add a delegate, let's say like delegate, let's do name to server this, and then I think we say prefix true. We can also say if there's not a server, it'll actually throw an error. There is a possible way to just say null, but I think every invite link is going to definitely belong to a server, so we don't really have to worry about that. But if we go back now, instead of saying invite link.server.name, we can say invite link.server_name. Reload, and boom, it does work, so that's totally good. And we'll probably just do a little bit more styling on this. So actually, I'm going to give it a fixed height, say height 40 view height, and I'm going to do flex all, center all the content again, and I'm going to add some padding. Take a look. All right, this is already looking a lot better. So we have like join server. We can even show who it's by if we wanted to. So why don't we do that? So I'm just going to have the second piece of text. Just going to say who owns the server. You can say owned by, and then print out the invite link. And this is another thing. I guess we could use delegation, but it's going to be more tricky. So I'm going to say invite link.server.owner.username. That should be fine anyways. So see, we have this text join server owned by Indigo. And you know, I want to make this join title larger. All right, I guess that's not bad. And then underneath, we're probably just going to have like a big button that says join. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's have a link to join server. Or actually, now that I think about it, this title would probably say like, you were invited to join this. Something like that. You were invited to join a server. How would we do that? It might be too large. I think text 5XL is way too large. Let's make that smaller. You were invited to join a server. And then what I'll do is I'll have another piece of text. So I'll just copy H1. Make this a little bit smaller. Let's go just regular XL. And then we'll print out the server name. And this is going to be a H2 instead of H1. Just because usually you want to make these headers unique. You don't want to have more than one H1. It's just like a CSS thing. So you were invited to join a server, server 6, owned by Indigo. Although I might make the server name like the largest thing. Yeah. Although obviously this isn't beautiful, but it's okay. This is pretty good for now. And then for the join button, I want that to definitely be very obvious. So I wonder if I can have like, all right, let's put a placeholder right now because that's another route that we're gonna have to define. But let's do some padding on the large. I'm also gonna make this text pretty big. Let's do a blue background. Let's reload. All right, it's not bad. We have this join server button, and I'm gonna try to see if I can do MT or margin top auto. Push it down. Okay, that totally does work. That's nice. And then maybe I'll just make the text like really big, like 3XL, so we get a big button. And oh yeah, what we could do is probably add padding bottom. Push it up a little bit. Yeah, that's not bad. And then maybe when you hover on it, it does some sort of cool effects. We can say like hover scale 105. We can also change the background if we want. Let's say we'd go like a darker blue. And then boom, you can totally see like when you hover on this link, it's totally saying that you're going to join. All right, so now for joining the server, for the route, since we already have an invitations controller, but we just have a show action, why don't we add a create action to invitations controller? And to do that, let's start in the routes. So I'll just say like, I'll do resources this time. So we can say resources, invitations. Then we're going to do only create because we don't want to override our show action that we already had. And now back to the invitations controller, let's add a create method. And this is going to handle adding, so I'm just going to add a comment real quick, handle creating membership to server. So the membership is something that we haven't defined yet. We're probably going to need like a model to store that membership information so that we can tell that a user is a member of like all these servers. So we're probably going to have a membership model, and it might even be like a server : membership. I think that's a good way of doing it, just in case we ever want to add a different membership model. And I just kind of like namespacing stuff. I think it's pretty clean. All right. So yeah, because right now I'll show you what happens if we do click like join. Well, it actually doesn't go there. So let me fix that button so it does hit the create action. So if we go back to invitation show, right here on join server, let's change this to go to invitations path. Oh, right, and we're gonna have to pass in, let's pass in just like the same unique ID. How about that? Or actually, we can just pass in invite link. I wonder what's the best way of doing it. Probably with the unique ID. So we'll pass in unique ID like this. We can join server. Although usually for like a create path, it's not going to know what to do with this. So let's manually specify the param that we want to set. So unique ID is set to this. And then I'm going to make this make a post request instead of the default get. I'm going to add a data key. And then I'm going to set the turbo method to post. All right. So now what'll happen if we click, it should actually go to that invitations controller create. And as you can see, it's working perfectly. So then what I'll probably do is I'll just add a before action to set invite link so that we don't have to, duplicate code. We can just clean it up by creating one method down here in the private section. So now we have the invite link available in both places. So then in create, we're going to have to somehow like create a membership for the server. So that's the next thing that we're going to add. And I think we're going to need a new model for this. So let's go into the terminal. I'm going to clear this out. And then let's generate a brand new model for server memberships. So to do that, I'm going to type in Rails G model to generate the model. It's going to be server/membership. And then a membership is going to belong to a user. User : belongs to, and it's also going to belong to a server. So server : belongs to. And that's really all we need, I guess, for now. So I'm going to press enter to generate this. Again, it's going to ask to override the server. Do not override the server because we already have all of that custom code and like all of those associations. So you don't want to override this. Make sure that you press N for no. We can even check out the migration, although I'm already pretty confident in it. So it looks like we're creating a table server_memberships, and it's going to belong to a user. It's also going to belong to a server. And then we could just migrate the database to add this new table. So do Rails DB migrate. And perfect. So now we can go ahead and start the server again. And what I'll probably do is I'll go and update the models. So like always, when you do a generation of a new model, as you can see, we got the new model inside a model server membership. And it does know that it belongs to a user. It knows that it belongs to a server. But these two models don't know about server membership yet. So let's go over to the user model first of all. And let's add a thing to add that association. So let's do has many server memberships. And then the class name is going to be server : membership. And I think that's probably all we need. We can probably, at that point, we can add another method, but I don't want to get to that yet. Let's save that for later, just to show like, the servers that it's joined. Because you have own servers, in a second, we're gonna add join servers as an association. But let's just start with this server memberships, and then let's go over to the server.rb. We'll also add has many, call it server memberships, but since it's already the server model, I'm just going to call it memberships. And the class name is going to be server : membership. And I think that's good. So now let's go over to the invitations controller, and we can handle creating the membership. So right here, we're just going to say current user server_memberships.create. And then, of course, we're going to need to pass in the server. So say server is invite link.server. But one thing we probably want to handle is this before action for invite link. It's not checking it's not like redirecting or anything if we don't find a invite link. So we probably want to handle that in the create row. So we can just say redirect to root path unless invite link dot present. I think that's a good way of checking. So if there's no invite link, it's just going to redirect to root path. We could even add an alert. Say like no, we'd say invalid invite link. All right, but in the other case, we're going to create the membership, and then let's also just redirect to the root path. But we could add a notice if we want. I don't really care about adding a notice just yet. Let's just keep it really simple and see if this works. We might also want to check if there's already a server membership. So maybe instead of saying create, we can say find or create by, just in case someone like accidentally, clicks the button twice. We don't want to create multiple memberships and have anything get messed up. So let's see if this works. Let's try to click join server, and I mean, nothing happened. So if we look in the terminal though, we got insert into server memberships. So it looks like that did work. So the next thing that we would add is, yeah, that other association. So that's what I was talking about. Let's go back to the user model. So now that you have server memberships, let's add another has many for join servers. You have own servers, you also have join servers. And join servers are going to be through. So in Rails, you can do something called has many through. So you have association through another association, and it just kind of does like some SQL magic to grab that association through this joining model. So to add that, all we have to do is just say through and server memberships. Go ahead and do that. And now we should be able to see the join servers. And to test that out real quick, I'm going to go into the console. So I'm going to do Rails C to get into the console, and I'm going to check the user.last. Then I'm going to check join servers. And we get an error. It says could not find the source association join server on join servers. Okay, so that's where another thing comes in. So they're thinking that we're looking for an association called join server, but we're just looking for one called server. So we need to set the source explicitly. And the reason why we're doing that is because I want to use a custom name, join servers. I don't want to just say like, has many servers, because we already have own servers. I want to separate them. So all we have to do is just say the source. So the source is just the server. And then what it's going to do is it's going to look at all of your server memberships, and it's going to pull out the server for each one, and then return it for join servers. So let's go ahead and test this again. So first we're going to have to reload the console just so we get the new code. And then we could try to run this again. User join servers, and check it out. This is a server that I joined. So yeah, that is pretty awesome. Just flowing. We're getting this app built. This is beautiful. So I mean, yeah, at this point, all we have to do really is just show the servers that a user is inside of. So right here on the side panel, right now we're only rendering own servers, so we also have to render join servers. And to do that, we can go over to the views dashboard show page, or actually the dashboard sidebar. And then what we'll do is, why don't we wrap up this link for server into a partial? Let's create a partial inside of the dashboard folder called _server by HTML.rb. And we can just drop this code in. This is going to be reused for both cases. And we might also want to add like a check, but we can get to that later. Okay, so on the sidebar, what we're going to do is, instead of even doing the each, why don't we do a little quicker way? So we can just say render partial. You have to do it this way. You have to say partial with the key, and then we're going to put the name of the partial, which is server. Now we can set collection directly and just pass in own servers. And then what I'll do is I'll copy this. We'll just have two. So one for own servers and one for join servers. And boom, when we reload, we can now see that this is a server that I've joined. I can go into it and I can start talking in chat too. And as you can see, it has my username This is pretty awesome. Now, one thing you'll notice is you kind of have to like scroll down to see the chat. That's something that we probably should fix, but for right now, this is just so cool. So I'm going to try to test it out with 2 people in the same server. So if I go back to the server 6, is what I called it. I go to the little room. That was interesting, actually. I don't see the message. If I say hey over here, check it out. It's sent by Young Indigo. If I reload on the left, you should see the new message. And yeah, this is pretty cool. Not real time just yet. Right now, we're not really like broadcasting or instantly updating the messages on both sides. That's something that you definitely want to do right away for Discord. It's supposed to be a real-time chat. But this is already so cool. We have a chat room, and it does kind of work. You just have to reload. That's something that we'll fix very soon. Alright, so now that we have this simple chat app set up, there are a few improvements that we could make, and I just want to show you guys how to do that, and like just add some sprinkles to make this app a little bit better. So the first thing, well, one thing that I just realized is that we're still showing the create channel button, even for users that aren't the owner, and we definitely want to only show that button if you are the owner, because you don't want some random guy creating channels in your server without your permission. So let's go ahead and fix that. And I'm going to start by going to the controllers. Let's go to servers channels controller. And what we want to do is we want to add some authorization to this. So let's do authorize owner. And if you remember, we already made a method called authorize owner, and it was inside of the invite links controller. But I also want to use it inside of the channels controller. So probably what we want to do is move this method into a shared method. So what we do is we can create a base class inside of the server's controllers. We'll have the server's base class, and then we can have all of these controllers that need to inherit from the base class. So I'm going to go ahead and do that by creating a new file inside of the servers folder, and I'm going to call it base controller. And then we're going to add the module for servers, and then we're going to add the class base controller, and this is going to inherit from application controller. And then what we can do is we can go back to that invite links controller and grab the authorize owner method, and I'll go and put this inside of the base controller, and I'll put it inside of a protected section. So the reason that we're going to use protected is because protected means that all these methods can get accessed by controllers that inherit from this class, whereas the private method, you would not be able to access the method this inside of the other class. So make sure that you're using protected and not private. And then let's go back to the channels controller, and I'll just make this inherit from the base controller. Although I do need to move this servers into a module, just so that it knows about the context of the base controller. I'm just going to indent this. And then back to the invite links. Instead of inheriting from application controller, let's inherit from base controller. And then what we can do is we could even move that authorize owner into base controller, but I think it's a better idea just to use the method because we still have to set the server first before we can check if the server owner is equal to the current user. So now that we got the authorization done, I'm going to also hide the link on the page so that when a user comes into a server, they don't see the option to create a channel. So that would be inside of the app views, servers, channels, wherever we had that sidebar. So I think it's the server, it's probably the server sidebar. So inside of here, where we have the link to create channel, we just want to limit this to only show if the user is the owner. So we'll check if server.owner equal to current user. Otherwise, it would just not show this link. Then we can end this off. So then when we reload, we no longer see that create channel button as a guest in the server, but the owner should still be able to see that button. So yep, it does work perfectly. And we can still create the channel. So let's add another one. Just gonna call this another channel, and boom, now we have that another channel here. And as a guest, I can go and access this channel. Although, oh, it looks like there is an issue here, because when you go to show the channel, we're still doing like the authorized owner. So let's go back to the controllers and the servers channels controller. And instead of just doing authorized owner for all of the actions, we want to set this to only go to a specific action. So let's do before action. We're going to do the authorized owner. Let's only do it on, I'm going to copy this %i method that we're doing down here just to make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to specify for channels, we only want to do new, create, or actually probably we could just do accept. So accept show, because show is the only one that all of the users are going to be able to view. If we reload, now we should be able to go back into the channel, and it does work. That's good. We can send messages, but they're still not getting broadcasted, that's probably like the biggest thing that you want to do on Discord. But the cool thing is that it's very simple to handle. So all we have to do is go over to that view. Let's go to the servers channels show page, and inside of this turbo frame tag, we can add a turbo stream frame. So let's do turbo stream from, and then we'll just pass it into server channel. So everybody who is inside the channel, they're going to be, it's going to open up a WebSocket connection with this identifier, which is just the server channel that you're inside of. So that's great. And then all we have to do is go over to the model, or actually first, we need to add an ID to this section that we're rendering the messages. So let's just add like an ID of messages. And it's good that we already have it in partial, because that'll make it easier to broadcast into this section. So now we can go over to the models and go to the server, or actually the channel message model, and we could just add an after create commit, and this will be a new method that we create called broadcast new message. And I'm actually going to put this in a private section, and we'll create the method with the broadcast new message name. And then inside of here, we are going to broadcast update to. And we're going to target self, which is or actually not self, we're going to target server channel, because that's where the user is streaming from. And then we can set a target, or actually, this is the streamable. So we're going to broadcast to this identifier. Then we're also going to set the target, which is the ID on the page that you're going to update. Actually, we're not going to do update, we're going to do append. This update would replace all the content inside of the element. We just want to add the message to the end of that element. So we're going to do broadcast append to, and we're going to broadcast to the server channel, and we're going to set the target to messages. And then we can set the partial. So the partial was like in the view, it's view servers channels underscore message right here. So let's add that path, servers channels message. Then we're going to set the local, so we have the message, which is just going to be self, because we're inside of this channel message model already. And this right here should actually set up the real-time capabilities. So let's test it out. So if we go back, reload both these pages, join into the channel, we should be able to talk in real time now. If I say, yo, check it out, it shows up on both sides. Hey. Yeah, this is pretty awesome. So now we have a real-time chat using Hotwire and Ruby on Rails. It's pretty beautiful. I know there's definitely a lot more that we need to do, especially like the scrolling functionality, but it's really not too bad right now. But of course, there's always those sprinkles. Like what we probably want to do is when a new message comes in, we could automatically, scroll down to keep this scroll at the bottom. And then, of course, in the future, we don't want to just render all of the messages, because there might be like hundreds and thousands of messages. So we actually just want to limit those. And then like maybe as you scroll up, it loads previous messages. So we can do some sprinkles like that. But I think this is a great place to end the first episode in the series because we already built basically the whole app. This has been a crazy video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for future episodes in the series. I'm really excited to be making these videos. And yeah, I can't wait to hear what you guys think about this. Yeah, this has been great.